93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
And we are back after a holiday weekend. This is the Fan Morning Show here on a Tuesday. I'm Kevin Bowen. James Boyd, Mark Dykton will have you here for the next couple of days. And boys, I will try not to do this too often here on this Tuesday morning, but I'm currently doing the show remotely from just outside of, I guess, Tampa, Sarasota area, Anna Maria Island down in Florida. And I'm sitting there last night getting ready to go to bed, and all of a sudden I look at James Boyd's Twitter. And Mark Dykton, do you have a guest bedroom, Mark Dykton, available?
Yes, we do. Yes.
Okay. I got nervous. All of a sudden, James Boyd is saying the power's gone out in his apartment, and by the 9th minute, he was going to ask Twitter for a spare bedroom. James, I can't think of any worse idea you've ever had in your life.
I was definitely joking, but I was serious though. I didn't even panic. Called my dad and told him, hey man, the power's out. I'm probably gonna like crash at one of my friends' cribs, and he's just like, get out of there now. It's gonna get freezing cold, and you know how parents are. And I'm like, relax, dude. It is not that deep. But I honestly was thinking, all right, well, you know, I have renter's insurance, so if all this like freezes and breaks overnight, and you know it's wet when I get back in the morning, don't care. So whatever.
The panic of the power going out is obviously real. The panic when the power's going out, and feel free to fill me in, guys. I mean, how cold is it? It's single digits, right?
It felt like it. I think James and I are both thawing out still.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. But in all seriousness, though, I was thinking like, okay, this is kind of bad because it's not just cold. It's like really, really cold, and it's dark. But 10 minutes, you know, a little over that, came back on. I was like, all right, no, you know, go back to being normal again.
Perhaps the most desperate move in the history of Twitter right there from James Boyd, asking someone potentially, do they have a spare bedroom for him? So fortunately, the power came back on at minute 10, and now we are here on this Tuesday morning. I always feel this way when we have the Monday off. We don't have too many of them off during the 52-week calendar, but I'm always like, damn, it's been a while since we last chatted, and a lot has happened. Certainly we'll get you set up for tonight basketball-wise. It is the very odd saying of, can Purdue stop a losing streak? We have not said that very often. Certainly over the last few years, they will be up in East Lansing tonight. Quite the challenge as a 3.5-point underdog to take on Sparty. It was an ugly defensive effort for the Boilers over the weekend, so we'll hit on that. Quiet week for Indiana. These two teams will actually play coming up on Sunday, so Indiana's got their bye. I want to say it was too dark in the morning, and it was honestly like 6 a.m., but boys, I think I parked next to Mackenzie and Baco at the airport on Saturday morning. Oh,
nice. That is, I mean, how could you not recognize me? Was it just the height or a bag or something like that?
So Saturday morning, the commute to the airport was brutal, and all of a sudden I park, at the top of the, I try to do the overhead parking, but of course it's so crowded that I'm parking all the way up top, and I've got my family's luggage. I drop them off. I've got my family's luggage, so I'm hauling a little bit more than he is, and he's probably about 100 feet in front of me. But I'm trying to think. I'm like, okay, taller dudes on the IU basketball team, and it's not like Balo's size. And then I'm thinking, boy, you think Mbaka wants to talk to me after just what happened at the end of the UCLA game Friday night? So I decided to keep my distance from him, but it makes sense. He would be going home for a little bit. Again, Indiana has their bye this week. They've got Purdue Sunday afternoon. We'll hit on some Colts as usual here today. I know James's colleague, Dane Brugler at The Athletic, he's got an interesting quarterback idea for the Colts as we are 1 week away from the NFL Combine descending upon Indianapolis. And we will get to a little bit of the NBA All-Star Weekend, and I will tell you where my viewing was locked in. I did not think I'd be viewing this at all, but I was locked in on Saturday night to a particular sporting event.
Well, God bless you.
I think I know where you're going, and I totally agree.
I think I know this too, and yeah, it's not NBA. I'll tell you that. It was rough.
Should we just accept it? Like, should we just stop complaining about it and realizing it's never going to get back to that level and just accept it? Or should we sit here and try to say, let's band together and figure out a better resolution for what the All-Star game has become?
Here's my only thing with my complaints and my rants. It was not necessarily that the basketball was not that competitive. I am looking back on it, I thought last year was pretty bad in Indianapolis. However, I'd rather it be a traditional game with 4 quarters and like no defense where you can actually see the guys who earn the right to be an all-star, at least get a few minutes out there. Like a guy like Tyler Hero was saying, that tournament style, He's like, it was, kind of this like warm up and then you're done. And you worked all year to be an all-star. So that's the part I didn't like. And then just the production side of it from TNT's perspective, I thought it was horrendous. You had Kevin Hart on the court more than Steph Curry at Oracle Arena, like the arena where Steph Curry became Steph Curry, won his first championship there. And you have Kevin Hart doing like a comedy special throughout the entire thing and then just bashing the sport. I don't know what league does this, but why do you have people up there commentating, including, Charles Barkley and others who just trash the sport on live television, and then everyone's like, wow, I hate this sport. Yes, because you're told daily to hate it. So I just thought it was too much sideshow, too many side quests. Just put the hoops out there, let them play no defense, and score 400 points. Who cares?
Well, and how about the gaps between the games? I mean, it was just like such long time to wait. And, I know I'm sounding a little old man, get off my lawn, but like, at least in a normal game, you know exactly what the flow is going to be of it. Yes, you're going to have a halftime show, but you're going to sit down and you're going to get 24 minutes of consecutive, minutes of basketball. And obviously you didn't get that with a weirder format on Sunday. So Pacers will have a late practice. I had to laugh. The Pacers sent this out yesterday. They practice at 5:15 today. So guys will obviously be traveling back to Indy throughout the day. They will play the Grizzlies coming up on Thursday. I'm laughing at like how I act on a vacation with my general health and picturing myself trying to handle that as an NBA player. Like, and again, me trying to compare myself to an NBA player is probably the most ludicrous thing I've ever said in the history of me on air. But it's laughable imagining like what Rick Carlisle would say if I like walked into the gym.
I mean, I thought about this. I was thinking, wow, do you just wake up somewhere else and it's warm and then you get back to Indiana and it's like, all right, you got work. And obviously it's a privilege to be in the NBA and to play for a lot of money, but it has to be a weird transition. And honestly, when I saw the email, Kevin, I was like, is this a typo or something? I was like, I don't think I've ever received
So did they do that when you were on the beat? Was it? Did they have the late like all-star return to Indy late practice? It's 5:15 today, which usually it's like right around 1 o'clock.
Yeah, I don't remember that. I've never remember going to the practice facility that late outside of like draft coverage where they do like the remote draft coverage. We can go in and kind of watch the draft together alongside your other beat writers. But other than that, no, I don't think I've ever been to, the practice facility. St. Vincent, and I haven't been there past like 3 p.m. like ever. So a little weird.
Pacers Grizzlies coming up on Thursday night. Shout out to Zach Edey, who did participate a little bit more than he thought he was going to in All-Star Weekend. Bob Kravitz at 9. Mark Dykton, fill me in. Bruce Weber is currently on an airplane, and we're hoping to have him at 9:30. Is that correct?
That's the plan. Yeah. Texted him yesterday, and he said, I'll be landing, barring any unforeseen delays. He should land in Chicago at 9:15, and he will call us at 9:30.
Did you guys catch the Tom Izzo Big Ten tribute video by any chance over the weekend?
I did not, actually. I missed that. I'm sorry.
Me either.
That was super well done. They gave, just a montage, 3 or 4 minute video of, all these different Big Ten. I would call it the history of the Big Ten, frankly. And, obviously those that are living, and congratulating him on passing Bob Knight for the most wins in Big Ten history. Bruce Weber was a part of that video, just super well done. So I find it fitting that we've got Bruce Weber today. Again, Purdue up in East Lansing. I settled in and might have cracked my first drink, and all of a sudden I thought I needed drink after drink after drink watching Purdue play defense on Saturday. That was unbelievable, and certainly credit to Wisconsin. I think Greg Gard honestly should be on the short list of Coach of the Year. A lot of rumors and chatter about how much NIL Wisconsin had. They lose all their guys, several of their big time guys. They have reloaded, rebuilt, however you want to call it. And that was absolutely surgical what they did to Purdue on Saturday. I was stunned. I mean, when is the last time a team, let's just say a Big Ten team, has gone into Mackey and put up that type of, what was it, 94? Was that the final?
Yeah, 94, 84. Yeah.
I mean, 94 points in regulation. I mean, Purdue shot it great. Purdue had 4 turnovers, like all the things you want to check off offensively, and yet Wisconsin, just an offensive clinic for ages in Mackey on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought that they also did a pretty good job of keeping Braden Smith in check. Obviously, he's a player who's going to get his to some degree. He still had 12 assists to 1 turnover, but only 6 points, 2 of 10 shooting. And so you can kind of get him off his game, and he's not able to be sort of that dual threat, point guard, it's tough, especially when you're not getting the stops on the other end. I mean, you look at some of these performances, man, I'm like, wow. And it's the efficiency of how they did it. 12 of 30 from 3, 40%, 32 of 52 from the field, 61%. Like, when you shoot that well overall, you tend to win many basketball games. So they had obviously a solid game plan and went in there and handle business in a way that we just haven't really seen from the Boilermakers. And I believe that's 2 losses in a row for them. So, obviously they want to play a little bit better here and get back on the winning side of things as that conference tournament approaches.
3 in a row. If they were to lose tonight, and granted, this has been a brutal stretch at Michigan, home to Wisconsin, at Michigan State. If they were to lose tonight, that'd be their first 3-game losing streak since the COVID year, 2019 into 2020, for that team. I mean, you're talking Eric Hunter, Nogel Eastern, Sasha Stefanovic is now calling plays for them. He was on that team. Like, it's been that long. You brought up all those stats, James. I mean, the one that stood out to me more than any, Wisconsin inside of the arc was 20 of 22. I mean, that is just a mind-numbing stat. I saw Jared Beeson does a great job with college basketball stats. He said it was the highest field goal percentage for any Division I team in a road game in the last 15 years. I mean, we're talking, Purdue's got defense lives here and all of that. I mean, it just and they were great defensively in January. When they had that, early win streak, they were outstanding. So very interested to see how they respond tonight. Again, they are a 3.5-point underdog. We will get to a little bit of the IU coaching news. I guess we have an update from the man that sounds like me trying to date the homecoming queen for the umpteenth year in a row and getting told no. And then I saw Kurt Signetti chimed in on Twitter on the IU basketball coaching search. Did you guys check that out?
I did not see that, but what did he say? I'm curious. What can Kurt Signetti suggest? Himself?
I there were times this year I thought he could do both. He could do like what Tony Hinkle used to do at Butler. So we'll share that again. Quiet week for Indiana and get to some other items. Any great weekend activities for you guys? I would hate to brag and tell you what we've done, so I'll try not to rub it in. But anything on the Boyd Dykton agendas?
No, I didn't have too much going on. Enjoyed the weekend and obviously enjoyed, ragging on the NBA All-Star weekend with everyone else on Twitter. So, me, Kevin, I love to be a hater. And so seeing everyone hate, with unity was very fun for me.
Yeah, weekend-wise for us, not a
sick
ton,
individual.
Not a ton since the weather, was not great. But yesterday we did, since it was President's Day, some of the museums were free, so brought the girls out downtown for some Indiana State Museum and Children's Museum and stuff like that. So good times there.
When James was dealing with this power outage last night for 9 minutes at his apartment, I thought to myself, James oftentimes hears us chat in the Colts media room about our children. And again, I think I can speak for everyone. We're all very lucky to be parents. We all are very loving to our children. We all love them greatly and dearly. But James sometimes will end the conversation with, man, I don't want kids anytime soon. And I thought if for some reason he needed to spend the night at the Dykton household, nothing against Mark's lovely girls, but that humbling experience of witnessing what that would be like would probably add another layer of, birth control to James Boyd.
Considering we had a little bit of a meltdown last night, I think James would have walked in the house and walked right back out. It would have been like the old Abe Simpson gif where he walked in, walked right back out.
And just, hey, I'll just take the cold and brave the elements. And, it was nice knowing you. But no,
yeah.
In all seriousness, I understand. And Joel Erickson from Indy Star, he always raised about his kids a ton, and I probably see him the most out of everybody. And I understand there's a lot of love there, and that's what I tell them. Like, love would have to compel me to do this, because when I hear about like the financial part, I'm like, man, like this is how much is daycare? Oh wow, like that's a big responsibility. So, I enjoy joking about it, but my mom is just like, as long as you don't have any kids running around here that I don't know about, you're fine. So I think she's she's kind of happy about that. But speaking of, presidents.
Happy Mother's Day, Mom.
Oh, she's happy every Mother's Day that, I'm not a father and things like that. But speaking of presidents, I actually went to Benjamin Harrison's house over the summer, last summer for the first time. And it was pretty fun.
Nice.
It was very informative, and pretty much all of it is how he had it way back when. And I'm not really into history like that. I do think you should know like big pieces of history, obviously, but that was a fun like Indiana type of thing, because I had no idea that house was even in Indiana, and I just kind of went one day and got a tour of it, and I thought they did a really good job of explaining everything. You can tell the people who run it are very passionate about American history and stuff like that. So I felt like I was kind of back in school, and it was a good experience. I encourage everyone to do it.
If you keep this up, and if you lead off next segment with, you know who's buried at the top of Crown Hill, I'm going to think that all of a sudden Jake Query has somehow infiltrated you, and I'm going to get very, very nervous here.
No, but I want to say the tour cost maybe $10 or something like that. It wasn't even that much, and they have a little store. You can buy some items, but it was honestly cool to see how Benjamin Harrison was living. And fun fact, he is the last president who had a beard.
Really?
Yes, that's the fun fact to tell you, which is,
wow.
And you think about it like, no way, but like, yes way.
Gosh, this is so Jake Query. Remember when we used to have President's Day shows, Mark, and he would give out like a presidential I assume he'll do it today, right?
Yeah, it probably killed him that we weren't on the air yesterday.
Oh, brutal. We are back today, though, and we got a ton to get to, so we'll unpack all of it. Do we have to get to, Joe's asking here, do we need to play the Micah Shrewsbury rant?
I mean, that's up to you. How are you feeling about that?
I mean, you know me, and I did trade a text with Micah Shrewsbury about said rant. Yeah, I feel like at some point, today, maybe we should slide that in. We got a lot of audio to get to. I know Mick Cronin was asked about the Indiana job on Friday night, very fittingly, that he, along with Dusty May, the last two coaches to be inside of Assembly Hall, asked about that opening. So we'll play that for you as well. Again, good Tuesday morning to you. I will be doing the show remote from Florida today and tomorrow down here with my family and my parents. We are having a wonderful time, and I will not rub it in any more than this with the weather you guys are dealing with back in Indy. Good Tuesday morning to you. Safe travels on this commute in, and thank you for spending it with us right here. Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, Mark Dykton, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
Brought to you by the Barbasol Horizon League Basketball Championships. March starts here at the Corteva Coliseum March 10th and 11th.
Should the Colts draft a quarterback in round 2 or 3? We've got some names to throw your way. I know James Boyd's colleague Dane Brugler has some thoughts on that. We'll play that upcoming here in a few, but let's get to a morning check down with myself, Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, and Mark Dykton on this Tuesday morning. Tonight, it's East Lansing for the Boilers. It'll be a Peacocker, Noah Eagle, and Robbie Hummel per usual. Purdue is a 3.5-point underdog. It's an astonishing stat, James. Purdue and losing streaks certainly don't go together over the last handful of years. If they lose tonight, though, that would be 3 straight for the first time since 2019, 2020, and you could probably go ahead and put the old Big Ten title hopes out for good tonight. A massive one if they want to keep those alive tonight.
Absolutely, and I think Matt Painter will certainly have them ready and have their attention. And it's like with any good team, you have a lot of success and you hit a skid, you're probably a little more locked in, a little more detailed than maybe you were during your winning streak. And the biggest thing is just getting back to the basics on defense. You just can't give up 90-plus points and win a college basketball game very often. Usually they're the ones putting up 90 points, and so we'll see if they can get back on track here tonight.
So it'll be number 13, number 14 tonight from East Lansing. Again, quiet week for the Hoosiers. They lost on Friday night. They are now 2-8 in the last month. UCLA hadn't won in this time zone yet they do get it done. Certainly some very great looks from Indiana there in the final, 10 seconds. Mackenzie Mbako getting the point-blank layup, getting the open 3 from the corner. I don't know if the basketball gods were shining down on, they know offensive foul call on him for going for the rebound earlier. But UCLA handled that zone much, much better. Indiana really didn't play a ton of zone throughout. That is now 4 straight home Big Ten losses for Indiana. That hasn't happened in 6 years. So it'll be no games for the Hoosiers this week. They've got Purdue coming up on Sunday. Butler back in action. They've actually won 3 in a row. Speaking of offense, they had a big old offensive explosion over the weekend. 97-86 over Georgetown. Pierre Brooks, a career high, highly efficient. 10-12 from him, 30 points. They are at Xavier tonight, the first matchup between, I guess if you would call any rival out there for Butler. It would be this one. Ryan Conwell, of course, the Indiana State transfer. He averaged in 15 a game for the Musketeers. James, really the only other thing I've got, feel free to throw anything at me if you've got any, but the Pacers, they will be back to practice today. They return from the All-Star break. It is a late practice, and they will have the Grizzlies coming up Thursday night. It is a start of 4 in a row here at Cambridge Fieldhouse as they return from the break.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how the Pacers come out of this break. Obviously, they got a huge win at Washington before the break, but did not play any defense. Speaking of defense, that was a trap game that they barely got out of the trap for. But as we talked about before the All-Star break, Kevin, I think that they need to play a higher or better brand of basketball, especially getting here close to the playoffs, than what we've seen, I would say, in the month of February for the Pacers. So I'm curious to see just how much they lock in on defense and how refreshed they might look, too, as well. I know everyone was a little disappointed that Tyrese Halliburton didn't make it to the All-Star weekend this year. Perhaps it's a good thing for him so he can get, right, get healthy, and then get ready for a playoff push, which should be very interesting considering, how things are going to shake out. And obviously the target on Indiana's back, having made it to the conference finals last year.
One more item I want to throw at you. We had Doug Bowles on Friday. That interview kind of focused a little bit more on the new gig for him, of course, taking on the IndyCar president as well as obviously the IMS president. Nathan Brown does an outstanding job covering IndyCar for the Star. He caught up with Doug Bowles as well, and he mentioned, again, 100 days out from the 500 on Friday, that as of Monday, so this would have been last Monday, that IMS had sold 8,200 more tickets for the 500 than it had at this point a year ago. So
wow.
This is on track to eclipse even last year, which I thought last year was an outstanding crowd. Now, obviously, the weather turned a little bit late in the week last year, so they were short of the second largest, short of the 100th anniversary back in 2016. About 5,000 tickets short, but as of now, certainly tracking on a great, great mark. And I would think if Mother Nature cooperates, they could have a huge, they will certainly have a huge crowd no matter what, but could have their biggest since 2016. So we'll continue to keep you updated. We are less than 2 weeks away from the IndyCar season starting in St. Pete. All right, on the other side, I know James has got an offseason checklist for the Colts. We want to get to some of those items. Dane Brugler from The Athletic, if you've heard him on our airways before, he had an interesting thought when it comes to this quarterback draft class and where the Colts could insert themselves in it in 2025. A week out from the Combine, we'll talk some Colts next. Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, and Mark Dykton on a Tuesday.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
You know, I know it's an ugly weather start here on this Tuesday morning, so let's reward somebody out there. Next Wednesday night, this would be a week from Wednesday, Butler St. John's, 9 o'clock from Hinkle Fieldhouse. So, again, this is a week from Wednesday, Butler St. John's. It's Ricky P in the building. Boy, that's worth the price of admission. And Butler playing easily their best basketball in quite some time. So, next Wednesday night, Mark Dykton, how about a 4-pack? 9 o'clock tip to Hinkle there. We'll give that away. 317-239-1070. Go ahead and give us a call. Kurt Signetti has chimed in on the IU coaching search. I would say he was indirectly maybe asked to chime in on the IU basketball coaching search. We'll hit that upcoming in a few. James, have you applied for the credential? Are we ready for the combine next week?
Fun fact, so The Athletic will actually do our credentialing for all of the reporters, so I never do mine. So I feel like a kid. Ooh. It's like, I got to just check in with mom and make sure that they have all of my permission slips to go, and I should be cleared, and I'm excited about it. And all my friends around the country will be coming in on Sunday night, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of familiar faces and obviously a lot of reporting going on when it comes to our Indianapolis Colts.
Well, I would say visit Indy among other people. Happy about get this weather out of the way this week. Next week does look a little bit better here in the Circle City. I did want to get to this Dane Brugler sound. And James, obviously, you know Dane well. He's your colleague. We've had Dane on. I think we had him on a few weeks ago. I don't know. Mark can maybe chime in exactly when we had him on. But, the whole quarterback debate. 3 weeks ago we had Dane on. We actually talked about this last week. I think this was right after I got the heave-ho from jury duty. Came back in studio, and the debate was, how should the Colts handle quarterback this offseason? And specifically, should they handle it all in relation to the draft? I think when you hear Chris Ballard talk about, hey, we need legit quarterback competition for Anthony Richardson, I think the general thought is that competition comes from the veteran route. And let's start here, James, before we get to the Brugler sound. When you heard Chris say that back a month ago, were you walking away from that thinking, okay, he means more veteran route, or did you walk away saying, no, maybe the door's open for veteran and or the draft?
I was thinking more veteran. The draft idea is actually one that I've been kicking around the last couple of weeks thanks to Twitter and other places. I hadn't really thought of, bringing in a veteran and also drafting, a day 3 quarterback or something like that. So that's an interesting decision or plan going forward. But to me, when Chris Ballard said that, in my mind, I was thinking, okay, that means no Joe Flacco and probably no Sam Ehlinger for next season. And then Anthony will probably be joined by 2
and both
new
are free
people.
Agents.
Exactly. So, I can see there being a lot of landscape changing with the Colts quarterback room, and probably warranted considering that Anthony needs to be challenged and you have to have somebody ready to go because of the injuries and the inaccuracy.
So this Dane Brugler sound, this is on the Athletic Football Show podcast, and Dane, I would say rather organically, and I think Mark included kind of the full clip, which will explain this. He kind of chimed in about the Colts in this quarterback draft class. And again, this quarterback draft class I don't think is a star-studded group. There's been a recent debate, I feel like, could you have more quarterbacks taken on day 2? And just to remind everybody how the draft works, round 1 is Thursday night, coming up in late April, Green Bay for the draft this year. Then day 2 would be rounds 2 and 3. I cannot recall the last time the Colts took a quarterback on day 2. That would be round 2 or 3. So, Mark, go ahead and cue the sound up. Again, this is Dane Brugler about, in general, the 2025 quarterback draft class, and then he pulls the Colts out as a team that could kind of slide in there.
Jalen Hurts was basically a flyer in the second round and outside the top 50 picks. So, and the Eagles were debating between him and another player up until the wire. So it's not like they, traded up and, really targeted him. Like, it just kind of worked out that they drafted Jalen Hurts. And so, and I'm not going to say that day 2 quarterbacks is now the norm. That's not it. The playoffs still chock full of first round guys. But in a class like this one, it is not going to be surprising when there's more day 2 quarterbacks drafted, especially when, okay, for example, I'm thinking about the Colts. If you're Ballard and you might feel like you have to go all in on this version of what you've built to keep your job, but I would argue that you look at one of these day 2 quarterbacks as a potential off-ramp if Anthony Richardson and that trajectory, it just doesn't take shape by Halloween. The chances of threading a needle like the Eagles did with Hurts, it's unlikely, but flat out, low percentage. But it's still a potential option that I think several teams are going to examine based off of what this draft is giving us.
James, what do you make of that? Let's play it out. Let's say the Colts take a quarterback round 2, round 3. Your level of surprise if they were to go that route?
I'd be pretty surprised because to me that would signal that you don't believe that Anthony can be the guy. Like, I don't mind if you take a quarterback on day 3 and it's round 4 or 5 and you're just trying to get, an athletic quarterback or somebody that you want to take a flyer on in the building. That is totally fine with me, especially, again, if Sam Ehlinger and Joe Flacco move on to free agency. But to invest a pick that high into a quarterback when you're also telling you're trying to do everything possible to help Anthony Richardson become the guy, become the face of the franchise, I think that will raise a lot of questions about Anthony's future, and rightfully so. And I get it. It's tough. And at some point, though, as we've talked about many times on these airwaves, Chris Ballard has to make a move that is geared towards trying to win now. Like, in my mind, if you're drafting a quarterback in the 2nd or 3rd round, you're basically saying that the guy we chose a few years ago, number 4 overall, isn't good, which is fine. But what does it say about your job? And should you still be around to see another quarterback possibly go through his maturation process? So I'd be pretty surprised. But I'm curious to see what you would think, Kevin. I mean, you've been around longer than me, and it just hasn't happened. I looked it up while you were talking. The last time the Colts took a quarterback that was not in day 3 or day 2 or day 1, outside of like Andrew Luck and Anthony Richardson, was actually back in 1988. Chris Chandler, round 3.
Dear Lord, I wasn't even born. 88, you said?
Yeah, 1988, 76 overall pick.
Wow. Yeah, so I've had a general quarterback thought that I've come around on over these last few years. I think I would take a quarterback every single year if I were an NFL
Interesting.
team.
Okay.
Now, I don't think I would do that, obviously, day 1 or day 2 on an annual basis, but I just think the depth of that position, and maybe it's because we have more running style guys, is just so damn important for your franchise that I'd throw a dart at the board every single year. And again, some of these guys, whatever, they might be Sam Ehlinger, or some of these guys might be guys that you never hear from. Some of these guys might actually provide some solid depth. You just never know. But that position, again, just means so much to me that I think you throw that dart out there. Now, that dart on day 2, I think is too rich for me this year. And I think you and I are kind of aligned on the same boat here, James, in regards to this draft and in general this offseason. It has to have a bit of an all chips in to making sure Anthony Richardson has the best possible situation around him. And again, that's probably wishful thinking, but that's how I view this offseason. And I've kind of changed my tune a little bit on that. Like, I was probably a little bit more open-minded to, hey, what about a defensive player at 14 overall? Lou Anarumo's the new defensive coordinator. Doesn't he need some help? And I've kind of said screw that idea. Like, I am you get Tyler Warren and you do it by any means necessary. That dude is an absolute playmaker. If you look at his numbers in college, not only was he a great tight end, but he did a lot of it with the ball in his hands. I think the Colts have really lacked a playmaker. I think they still lack it. I think their wideout group is mostly guys that, Alec Pierce, for example, he gets open down the field. You don't throw him a 6-yard ball and then he breaks a tackle or two and he takes it for 16 or 26. So those types of playmakers I think are rare. And I think it's very necessary. So I would not go the quarterback day 2 route. And I get that it's a position that obviously matters a whole lot. And certainly you have questions about Anthony Richardson. I'm not ignoring any of that. But to me, this offseason I think has got to have that focus of, yes, you're going to sprinkle in defensive picks, but such a red shirt down the road type of selection, I think it's wishful thinking. And, who knows who that guy would be. Is it Jalen Milroe? I think, Mark, we had Matt Miller on, back when the season ended. He mentioned Jalen Milroe from Alabama. Is it Jackson Dart seems to be a name a lot of people want to throw out there. Quinn Ewers, Will Howard, Tyler Shuck from Louisville. I know is an older quarterback that a lot of people like as well. Yes, but no. I think your quarterback competition comes the veteran route. And at the end of the day, either you figure it out with Anthony Richardson or this regime doesn't deserve another chance of finding a franchise quarterback. that's just how I feel.
So here's my follow-up to your quarterback soliloquy, which was very well put together, Kevin. I was like, man, he's got a little fire this morning down there in Florida, so he's got some heat.
I got a little spice in the coffee here at 7:45 in the morning.
But to follow up, or just to, I guess, play devil's advocate a little bit, so say you're a franchise like the Bills or the Bengals, and you have Josh Allen, you have Joe Burrow, or you're the Ravens, and you have Lamar Jackson, you have a guy who is proven to be a very high-level quarterback year in and year out. Does your philosophy on drafting a quarterback every year change? Like, are you saying that because the Colts haven't really found that guy since Andrew Luck? Or would that be your philosophy overall, no matter who's under center?
I really think no matter who. I just think that position, and again, the depth added. And, I look at Cleveland from a couple years ago and just how far they had to go down the depth chart to find a quarterback. It's so difficult, I think, and the draft generally, I think, is a crapshoot, especially at that position, that, consistently throwing darts at the board at that spot, to me, makes sense. And, if they get to the draft here coming up in 2 months and they want to draft one in round 4, round 5, sure, by all means. But I view kind of round 1, 2, and 3 of like, can you find the instant impact guys that potentially kind of infiltrate the top 10 of your roster? I think that's where this roster lacks so much, is the real top 10-ish type talent. Quantity, I don't know if it's that poor of a roster, but the high-end quality, I think it is. So, again, quarterback and the pipe dream of a Jalen Hurts, or, if you really want to look at some of these second and third round quarterbacks, it's difficult to hit on that. And I think when you look at the general support, not only around Richardson, but I still think defensively you need something. Again, early on, boom, you take Warren at 14, and then as you move your way through round 2, round 3, maybe you do slide a little bit more over the defensive side of the ball, and we'll see how the free agency plays out. At some point today, I want to get to your top 10 list, and if we don't get to it today, maybe even on Wednesday, because I think you have a free agent there that makes a ton of sense for this team, not only age-wise, but position-wise as well. So it's weird, and I get that some people always say, well, I don't know if I totally agree with that because quarterback is the position. But I am probably a little bit more of the thinking of right now he had a healthy Richardson's, he has this healthy offseason. You try to get him an extra playmaker, again, i.e. Warren. Defensively, you're bringing in a new coordinator. You try to obviously help out that side of the ball as well. I don't think you have this luxury necessarily to draft the second or third round quarterback and where is this guy particularly going to get reps? Okay, let's play this out. You draft Quinn Ewers in round 2 or 3. Okay, boom, Richardson fails. Is Ewers your starter next year? Are you how do you view that from a franchise quarterback standpoint? No, I think if Richardson bottoms out, you hope that you just tank this year, and boom, you're drafting in the top 10, and that's your quarterback. So now, again, you slide into kind of this awkward spot of exactly what that player, how he would fall on the depth chart. So I probably view it more in a round 4 or 5 light than I do in a round 2 or 3 light. That's how I would view it. I think your quarterback competition, and I say that in quotes, needs to come from a little bit more of the veteran route here this offseason, and that's probably the path that I would go down.
Well, who I can't wait to hear from, Kevin, is Shane Steichen, because he will just tell us everything when it comes to the quarterback position, what they're thinking. But in all seriousness, I am curious to know, or at least pick their brains when it comes to Chris Ballard, when it comes to Shane Steichen, and also it all goes back to Anthony Richardson. What things are you all doing to sort of monitor his progress throughout the offseason and gives you sort of that confidence to perhaps, feel better about where the season is going to start versus where it ended for Anthony, where we know he missed the last few games with a back injury, the inaccuracy wasn't great, and things like that. So, we'll see. I'm very curious to see their philosophy, and we'll find out, I believe, a lot more when free agency begins, obviously, because when that first, wave of free agents signs, we'll see whether or not Chris Ballard in particular has taken some of that criticism and maybe some of that change to heart when it comes to being more aggressive and getting guys that I believe could be win-now players. And I kind of agree with you, Kevin, when it comes to perhaps leaning more towards free agency for your bigger defensive player pickups in the draft for your offensive assistants. And so when you were talking about, should they get out here and draft a safety or something like that in the first round, My question would be, whether it's Tyler Warren or somebody else, I think anything you can do to help Anthony Richardson probably saves you from whatever else happens around the team. Meaning, if you do everything in your power and Anthony takes a significant step forward, which again, which still I believe is a long shot because of what we've seen so far, quite frankly, but if he does, everything else is a lot more forgivable. I know Chris Ballard would catch a ton of heat if Lou Anarumo comes in and his defense is, porous and they're, giving up a bunch of points, whatever. But if Anthony looks good or looks a lot better or at least looks like a, above average NFL starter in year 3, there's some promise there, I truly believe everything else is almost forgivable.
I want to make sure that, if I'm Chris Ballard, I don't want to walk away from the Anthony Richardson experience or era and say we didn't give him enough. I want to try to exhaust all of that around him, and then obviously if it fails, and right now it's not going on the path that you want it to go on, then at least you say, okay, we tried, we felt like the cupboard was pretty stocked. He just didn't hold up his bargain or whatever. From a coaching staff standpoint, we didn't develop that. 3 weeks from tomorrow, free agency will begin here. Again, we'll be at the Combine coming up next week. Hoping to get Bruce Weber on at 9:30. I know he's on a flight here early on this Tuesday morning. We will get to him. James, you are not necessarily in the, locked into the heartbreak that Brad Stevens has caused Indiana fans for years. I found it very fitting. The latest news from Brad Stevens came on Valentine's Day on this Friday. And this one, where I found this one a little different, James, is this. And again, you've followed NBA coaches, and you have probably been in press conferences where you have to have some of these questions asked. Where I found the Brad Stevens, and again, he tells Jeff Goodman that he's not, he doesn't have interest in the Indiana job. I think his direct quote was more Celtics related. He didn't have to do that this time. Like in 2021, he was still the head coach of the Celtics. So like Dusty May a couple weeks ago, like Mick Cronin on Friday night, they're in these press conference settings. I mean, James, when's the last time Kevin Pritchard has talked to the media?
That's a good point. That's actually a great point. Yeah.
So that's where I found this Stevens statement different. It's that he didn't need to say anything. The only time we see Brad Stevens right now is either at a Celtics game or behind the Notre Dame bench, watching his son Brady as a walk-on for Micah Shrewsbury. I mean, that's it. So that's where I did feel like this was different. Like Dusty and Mick Cronin, they can't run from the questions. I mean, right. Brad Stevens, if he wanted to, he could run. And, if you want to play the IU pipe dream scenario, it's, he's won a title now. He's not coaching anymore. He's got a son in college. His daughter, is in high school now, et cetera, et cetera. So do you laugh at the Brad Stevens IU rumors, or did you understand a little bit of the pipe dreamy nature, which Brad Stevens denied on Friday?
I understand the pipe dream nature of it, and mainly because, as I've been taught throughout my life, shout out to my parents for basically teaching me the power of being okay with no, but you got to ask. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid to hear a no, because if you hear a yes, you just never know. And so it's like checking the tires during the trade deadline. This player that you want may never be available, a la Luka Doncic, and it's like, wait a second, he is. And so I know in that scenario it's the Mavs that reached out, but neither here nor there. The point is, I understand why IU or others might check in on Brad Stevens, but other than that, I think Brad Stevens is in a very unique spot in the NBA realm where if he hadn't had this much success at his current job, perhaps it's more of a realistic option for him personally. Because we look at what he's done with the Celtics, I mean, you're asking a guy to leave a team that just won a championship. Their core is young. They have one of, arguably the top 5 player in the world, Jason Tatum, as the face of their franchise, and they're not going anywhere for a long time. I mean, they're contenders again this year, and probably, in my opinion, they're my pick to go back-to-back and win it again. So that's a lot to give up, especially knowing what you just said, Kevin, where he doesn't have to deal with any media scrutiny ever. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but in my mind, I'm thinking if I enjoy what I do and we're winning and I'm making good money and I don't have to deal with people like me and you, Kevin, who are asking about his job security every, at time you lose a Big Ten game, then what? So I understand it, but it is a unique situation where he's always going to have those ties to Indiana. And perhaps just out of just respect for his home state, he put it out there to kind of put it to bed rather than letting people just kind of run along with his dream.
We'll play the Mick Cronin audio upcoming. Again, he was asked about the Indiana job on Friday after the game. Similar to Dusty May, I would say he did not necessarily hold back. He a little bit more expansive. Fittingly, Mick Cronin and Dusty May have talked about the future of the IU job more than Mike Woodson has talked about it here over the last week plus. So we'll play that audio coming up 8 o'clock hour. Get to our GOATs of the weekend. Bob Kravitz at 9, Bruce Weber at 9:30. Still want to get to a little bit more on the Colts front as we start to ramp up here from an off-season standpoint. I'm Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, Mark Dykton. It is a Tuesday, 8 o'clock hour approaching here. 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, 8 o'clock hour here on a Tuesday. 11 hours from now, it would be Purdue up in East Lansing. They are a 3.5-point underdog tonight. It would be their first 3-game losing streak since 2019-2020. That's what's at stake tonight for the Boilers, as they've got Michigan State. Again, nothing for Indiana this week. They will host Purdue coming up on Sunday in the rematch of that one down at Assembly Hall. Bob Kravitz at 9. Hopefully Bruce Weber coming up at 9:30. James Boyd alongside myself, Kevin Bowen, here on this Tuesday morning. You catch any of the old Super Bowl parade?
I did, and I thought it was chaotic, as most parades are. I thought that Jalen Hurts looked like he belongs like a 1996 film because he acts like he's 45 or he was born in a different era with his like hats and the way he looks and things like that. But it was pretty much what I expected to see. And I just wonder from a media perspective, because I know reporters have to cover that, but I'm like, what do you actually cover? And then what's on the record? We talk about on the record often in media, and that means you can use what they say. But I'm like, if everyone's drunk, do you use any of it? Like, what do you do? So I think that's an awkward situation to be in, because I feel like if you are, let's say, the Athletic Eagles reporter or whatever, you can't drink. You're on the clock. So you're just around a bunch of like very inebriated people, and they're all having fun. And what can you actually use for your work? So I don't know. I would want to skip the parade if from a media perspective and go as a fan, if that makes sense, and just enjoy what everyone else is doing and not have to, parse through the weird times.
Yeah, Quinion Mitchell, I think, takes the cake for the drunkest of the videos that I saw, the cornerback out of Toledo from Friday. You had this tweet, I think it was a couple days, maybe it was about a week or so ago, James, but you've kind of got a few bucket list items, right, that you want to cover in your life, sports-wise?
Sure. Yep.
Refresh my memory. What are those events again?
So I was saying this. I said this during the Super Bowl. I said every year, and I will cover the Super Bowl one day. So I guess that means either in general or the Colts make it. So whichever comes first. But the Super Bowl, the NBA and WNBA finals, and then the Olympics. I would love to check those 4 off my list. When I can say I've done that, I feel like I've done something with my life.
Little LA 2028 action could be on the horizon for you there.
There you go. I plan on being there. Got to speak it into existence.
I love that list. It was funny. I'm watching the parade, and first off, what I always love about it, and Philadelphia had this, I feel like they are obviously the viral drunk clips, and we'll play like AJ Brown had a great quote, I thought, when he took to the podium afterwards. We'll play that audio upcoming, and like Howie Roseman gets hit in the forehead with a beer and he's bleeding, and next thing you know, he's taking the mic saying, "I bleed for this city." I mean, like, that's just like epic. You know, police officers doing the tush push or the brotherly shove, like, that's just great stuff.
Did you see them telling the mayor to wrap it up because her speech was too long?
Oh no,
that was the most Philly thing ever. Yes, she talked forever, and they wanted to hear from the players, so they're like, wrap it up, and she's just going on, and I'm like, what is going on? It was bad, but also great because it's Philly.
I love Eagles fans so much. 2 sentimental moments that I absolutely love. One was the Eagles offensive line. I saw a video where they took, I believe the guy's name was Ryan Quigley. He was a victim of the terror attack on Bourbon Street on New Year's Eve into New Year's Day. He was one of the victims and is in a wheelchair, huge Eagles fan, in a wheelchair, and they took him out of the wheelchair and pulled him onto the offensive line bus. Yes. And I'm thinking, of all of the buses and floats, if you're on the offensive line bus, that is going to be an absolute party on that bus. Yeah. So I loved that video. It was really cool. And the other one was Saquon Barkley. He, I guess, recognized, and again, I don't know how the parade necessarily works. I assume the people that are inside the ropes would kind of be your full-time employees. Obviously, people that, work for the organization, et cetera, et cetera. For those that don't know, the Colts definitely have people that are just kind of game day specific employees. And some of those, I think, are the ball boys. And Saquon Barkley, I guess, recognized one of them and literally picked him up out of the crowd and said, come under the ropes and party with us. So I love that. And just the balance of, you obviously have the hilarious drunk stuff, but then you also get, frankly, memories of a lifetime for a lot of these people. Mark, go ahead and cue up A.J. Brown here, and this is obviously at the end of the parade as a variety of Eagles people take the mic. It was time for A.J. Brown to speak.
I said I was a diva. I said all I care about was stats. If you're going to get all those things wrong about me, but one thing you can get right, I'm a champion.
I love it.
The drop the mic there from A.J. Brown.
I mean,
that was so good.
They say I'm a diva. It's like he has an accent, which I don't know if that was, again, the effects of whatever he was, sipping on, or also speaking some truth. And I do think that it's easy to put that label on wide receivers. And yes, A.J. Brown at times can seem a bit, contentious and things like that. But obviously he had a huge factor in them winning that game, having the season that they had. And now, I mean, him, Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, that's the best thing about being a champion. No one can tell you anything else. Like, you can say, I won it. You did it, whoever is criticizing me. So I enjoyed that. But I will say this, Kevin, for context, the ball boy was not a boy. That's a grown man, for those who may not be familiar. Like, they have grown men.
Saquon picked him up like I could pick up my 2-year-old son.
So my question to you, Kevin, is when the Colts win the Super Bowl in whatever year, and you're still around, I'm going to need you to lift me up over, whatever rope that they have, just as Saquon did. I believe in you.
I think you are the only person in the media room that I could potentially somewhat lift up.
I'm telling you, man.
I don't think there's anybody else.
I'm not putting on too many more pounds in the near future. So
you and Hagen maybe are probably the only two people that I could lift up. A week from today, or excuse me, 2 weeks from today, it opens up today. James franchise tag deadline. Now, this time last year, we monitored it heavily because of Michael Pittman Jr. And obviously, Pitt got the tag, and then they got the extension done. That was the first player to be tagged here in Indianapolis since Pat McAfee wanted to, I would say, probably do some things to Ryan Grigson that weren't very legal when he tagged him back in 2013. I don't see anybody that would qualify as a tag candidate for the Colts this year. Do you? Would you even throw a Ryan Kelly out there, or are you not even paying attention to this?
No, and I actually checked in on this just as far as the calendar, making sure I didn't miss when this happened. But then I also looked at who's the free agents, just to refresh my memory. And obviously the biggest name I would say on this list is probably Dio Dangbo or Will Fries, and neither one to me is franchise worthy. I would expect the Colts to prioritize bringing Will Fries back. I know he broke his leg in week 5, but he also was playing some really high-level football and should be good to go, barring any crazy setbacks. The weird thing about breaking a bone and breaking things like your tibia or whatever is that once you get healed up, it's usually an easier recovery process than like a ligament or an Achilles in some sense, for context there. But I don't think so, Kevin. I don't think you have to stress or we have to sit around and figure out, okay, when's the actual tag deadline and will they get a deal done? And even last year, it never felt like a real franchise tag, if that makes sense. Like, we all kind of knew, at least that was my thinking, that the Colts will work something out long-term with Michael Pittman Jr., and that was just sort of like the next step in a long process. Whereas, a team like the Bengals, for example, might franchise tag T. Higgins, and it's like, all right, what does that mean for the future? I don't know if they're going to give him a big money deal. So we'll see. I'm more curious to see who gets contract extensions. And I have 2 candidates that I think are deserving out of the guys who are up.
Again, I want to get to that at some point. Actually, I hear you out on one of them. I probably disagreed on the other, and I want to make sure that we do get to that. Maybe if we don't have time for it today, I know you got something up on The Athletic that I definitely want to touch on. Again, reminder, Bob Kravitz coming up at 9, Bruce Weber at 9:30. I saw Curt Cignetti found the need, and I certainly get why he would do this, to fire off a little tweet here in regards to possibly his insight on the IU basketball head coaching search. So for those that maybe haven't been totally locked into whatever the IU candidates, and this is a little bit more far-fetched. Frankly, it has a little bit of a Cignetti flair to it, but right now Vanderbilt is having a very nice season under Mark Byington, who came over from James Madison. Well, obviously, where did Curt Cignetti come from? James Madison. So you had this tweet from Adam Zagoria over the weekend. He covers college basketball on a national landscape. He tweeted this. He goes, amid the Brad Stevens news and the Chris Beard chatter, which I believe Jeff Rabjohns told us no on Chris Beard due to off the floor. Zagori said, one name to keep in mind at Indiana is Mark Byington. I'm told Curt Cignetti is pushing for him at Indiana, and he presumably has the juice now after the football season. Vandy is 17-7, and Byington led JMU to the second round last year. So when I saw this, I thought to myself, boy, God bless Curt Cignetti. They could build the statue for him tomorrow, but please. There is no way, shape, or form that Curt Cignetti should be, trying to influence Scott Dolson here. Just if you're an IU fan, you should pray for one thing, that everyone just lets Scott Dolson handle this thing. Like, no outside influence. We don't need, Quinn Buckner or the high-level boosters or the board of trustees. Scott Dolson has earned the right to run this search however he would like to. And let's just let everybody stay out of it. In true Curt Cignetti fashion, he follows up with this tweet. Not true. Scott Dolson knows a lot more about basketball than I do. I have my own team to focus on. Curt Cignetti, thank you.
I don't believe him. I don't believe him. He is standing in Scott Dolson's office right now. We speak, saying, "Get this done. I need the praise for this." But I also think that when it comes to reporting on this type of stuff, and Adam Zagori has been great for a long time, so no disrespect to him at all. But I think the Jeff Saturday era here has traumatized me. So when I hear just any suggestion of people who aren't experts in that field making decisions as far as coaches go, I don't think that's a good idea. Meaning,
no, it's not healthy.
It will be wildly arrogant for a football coach to say, "Oh, I know what would be successful in the basketball court at that level." This isn't high school. This isn't, I say that tongue in cheek, because we know what Jeff Saturday's resume was before he came to Indianapolis. But I just don't think that's a realistic option. So if someone told me that, I would be like, "All right, that sounds cool, but this is not a Disney movie." And so I would move on.
Mark, I want to get to that Mick Cronin audio here in just a second. He was asked about the IU job after the win over Indiana on Friday, and certainly didn't hold back in having a very reserved answer. He probably spun it a little bit more in the direction of, ask UCLA fans how they feel about the job that I've done. But I think this, strikes me, James, and I don't necessarily think Indiana will get to this boat, but who knows? I mean, if you look at it, I would say Kentucky and Louisville had to go very far down the list last year to make their respective head coaching hires. But I think one of the hardest things to do in college basketball is hiring or believing in the hot March Madness coach. Is the mid-major run, is that real or is it fake? And again, you've got examples on both sides of it. Chris Beard, for example, would be an example of, I think he has proven himself. Jim Larinaga, if you want to go all the way back to George Mason. He's certainly, I think, proved himself over the test of time. I think Shaka Smart has proven himself. But then you look at the other side of it, James, and whether it's, remember Lob City or Dunk City? Remember that with Florida Gulf Coast?
Yeah.
Andy Enfield moves on to USC, and then, he flames out there, and now he's at SMU. You look at our guy, and I get that there's some NIL impact into this with where Seton Hall is at of the Big East, but remember St. Peter's run and Sheehan Holloway and how that has played out for him. It's not really parlayed that into anything. If you want to go way, way back, Indiana fans, they beat a Cinderella run in Kent State back in 2002, and I don't think Stan Heath necessarily turned that into great success after that. I don't think that necessarily happened, especially at Arkansas. I think now he's at Eastern Michigan. So I think that part of this process, and again, I don't know if Indiana will get there, but like Mark Byington, for example, would fall into that boat. Certainly Louisville did with Pat Kelsey, and I guess in a way, Mark Pope, granted he was an ex-player, Kentucky kind of fell into that as well. I think that's one of the toughest things for ADs, i.e. Scott Dolson, to figure out. Do you believe in the hot mid-major coach, or was it simply lightning in the bottle of hey, and I guess maybe Dusty May, but again, Dusty May's doing it at a very high level here at Michigan for 1 year, but I mean, look back at Florida Atlantic's run a couple years ago, James. They are a Memphis, just pee down their leg in the final 10 seconds away from losing in round one.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, they're in the Final Four. And it's that game totally shifts how we probably view, certainly how the national, maybe we view Dusty May differently because we're in the state, but certainly how the national, college basketball world would have viewed Dusty May and Florida Atlantic back then.
100%. And it's funny you bring up that Memphis game because obviously, as some listeners know, I covered John L. Davis, who's now in Arkansas with John Calipari. He was on that Florida Atlantic team. He's from Indiana. He's from Gary. And to see him play on that stage, having covered him in high school at Gary 21st Century, was awesome. But I remember thinking and feeling so heartbroken when they lost in the Final Four in a buzzer beater because I knew how lucky they were to be there. Not that they didn't work hard, but as you said, they like nearly every break that could possibly happen for Florida Atlantic, which is why we love the March Madness tournament and NCAA and all that, is because of those type of runs where it's improbable, it's probably never going to happen again, those types of things. And so I don't know. For me, I would probably have to look at what did you do pre whatever run that put you on the national stage for a couple of weeks or a couple of days in March. And I think
what that program did. So to me, people have said, hey, is Dusty May Archie Miller? And I don't agree with that because people win at Dayton. People have won at Dayton for years, whereas nobody won at Florida Atlantic. Certainly nobody had won there recently. And that's kind of the Curt Cignetti thing. Like, nobody really won it. Was it Elon? I think maybe Cignetti was prior to James Madison. Like, that's what I think stands out to me more of, like, are you winning in places people don't win? Now, certainly there are examples of, probably coaches that have, come from a mid-major rank. And that program has had success on a mid-major level, and yet they've turned on to do something, pretty good. But I think that's a part of the process that I believe is really difficult. Mark, go ahead and play this. This is Mick Cronin, who, certainly the Mick press conferences have been must-watch throughout the year. You're going to hear a follow-up in here. Mick was asked about the Indiana job on Friday night in Assembly Hall and how his name has been thrown around for that gig.
Mick, you talked about that coaching situation with Indiana. Is that anything you've given any thought to or that you would entertain?
I just think it's tough to do that stuff during the season. Oh, that's not what you're asking.
It is.
I just think it's tough to do that stuff during the season. But actually, it's just the whole thing's gotten so crazy because we had a couple coaches did it, right? Tony and Coach Larrañaga, they did it. Leonard, the coach I replaced, it happened to him during the season. I don't like to see that. As far as me, I would never comment on a coaching situation. It'd be wildly inappropriate because I'm the son of a coach, and the way I look at it is that Mike Woodson's the coach at Indiana. That man's coaching his basketball team. And he is a national champion. I happen to know him. I know Kenya Hunter on his staff extremely well for many years. I have tremendous respect for their kids and their team. And to me, nobody should say anything that distracts from anything with them. With that. So I just think it would be wildly inappropriate. And that mostly for what I said, my respect for Coach Woodson. He's over there coaching his team. That's all that anybody needs to. I understand you guys got to do your job and you got to ask. It's just that's my stance on that stuff.
Sorry, and to follow up, that more so that you're kind of a name on these hot boards that are coming out. And
you know what? Here's how I look at that stuff. You might be on your hot boards. They might want my ass fired on our hot boards. That's how I look at that. So hey man, I stay off the hot boards.
James Wood, what gets more clicks, the hot boards or mock drafts?
That's a great question. I feed my family of one with mock drafts. So I'll probably go mock drafts just because they're a little bit easier to find via Google search. But the boards can get a bit, spicy when it comes to, rumorous things like this. So I think that Mick Cronin kind of hit it on the head there. But I will say he didn't say no. Like most coaches, they never just say no. So you're always like, what is he really saying? And I'm hearing a lot of respect and perhaps love for IU, but I do know he would be a good soundbite if he were to be the coach here, for sure.
The Mick Cronin resume has a lot of NCAA tournament all over it. The runs maybe aren't necessarily there, but he certainly has viewed some displeasure of how UCLA is talked about or, maybe treated in a Big Ten conference. So would he want to return to the Midwest? I don't know. That one seems to fall in like a somewhat realistic / nice resume boat that I think there actually would be some IU fans that would be content with that hire. All right, again, upcoming Bob Kravitz at 9, Bruce Weber 9:30. We do have a somewhat busy night of hoops. Let's go ahead with the morning check now.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by the Barbasol Horizon League Basketball Championships. March starts here at the Corteva Coliseum, March 10th and 11th.
All right, they're right next to each other in the polls, and they'll be next to each other on the floor tonight in East Lansing. It's the 13th-ranked Boilers, dropping 6 spots after their winless week. They will take on the number 14 Spartans of Michigan State. 3.5-point underdog, Purdue. This is Peacock. This is 7 o'clock. Noah Eagle and Robbie Hummel. I did see Purdue was announced as the 7th overall seed. They did one of those mock selections over the weekend. They then obviously have the Olay defensive effort against Wisconsin. Joe Lunardi, I saw, had him kind of as a middle 3 seed right now in the bracket. But, James, I'm very interested to see how Purdue responds defensively tonight.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, again, we can go back and look at the numbers. It was just a tough night. You give up 94 points in a 40-minute basketball game. Like, that's just not conducive to winning. And trust and believe in a guy like Matt Painter. I know it might get old to keep saying it, but he is someone who's been around the block many, many times. He's been through, the ups and downs before. So if anybody can kind of, grab the attention of his team and kind of let them know what their standard has been, not what he wants it to be, where it's been in the last, 10 years, he is going to, be able to do that. So I'm curious to see how they respond. And then Michigan State isn't going to lay down either. They pick up that big win to get Tom Izzo to be in the all-time leader.
That was a big win on the road.
Oh, it was a huge win. And then on top of that, they want to, play some of their best basketball and keep some things rolling. So it's not like anybody feels bad for you. So we'll see how it goes.
6 teams within 2.5 spots of Michigan atop the Big Ten. I cannot wait to see how this plays out over the final 2 weeks. And again, the Wisconsin stat from Saturday that is just so staggering to me. They were 20 of 22 from inside the arc. 20 of 22 from inside the arc. Jared Beeson had this stat. It's the highest 2-point percentage by any Division I team on the road over the last 15 years. All right, other game tonight, it will be Butler in action. They've actually won 3 in a row here. The Dogs somewhat turned it around in the month of February. They have Xavier tonight. Of course, this is Ryan Conwell, the Indiana State transfer, the Pike product, averaging 15 a game for the Muskies. 7.5-point underdog is Butler. They are weirdly the top scoring team in the Big East and the top 3-point defensive team in the Big East, yet they're 9th in the standings. It's a very odd season for Butler here, especially in conference play. So 7 o'clock for Purdue, 8 o'clock tonight for Butler. Only other one I really had, James, was the Pacers have got the late practice tonight as they return from the All-Star break. 5:15. They will welcome the Grizzlies into Gainbridge Fieldhouse Thursday. Did I catch a Ja Morant dunk contest tweet from Saturday night? Do we believe that, or do we not believe it?
I don't believe anything.
I'd love to see that man against Mac McClung.
No, do you remember a decade ago LeBron said he was doing it next year, and did that ever happen?
Yeah,
no,
but I actually somewhat would believe Ja Morant. Ja Morant's pretty crazy, so I think he would actually do it.
Here's why I don't think he'll do it. He's injury prone. He's missed a lot of games this year, so Memphis will probably be like, don't ever do anything voluntarily and hurt yourself. And number 2, I have this theory that I've been waiting to throw on the air. So Mac McClung obviously is a great, great player. He actually broke Allen Iverson's high school scoring record out there in Virginia, I believe. So he's a big-time player. I don't know if he's an NBA player. I don't think he is, but he's a talented player. But all that to say, because he doesn't have a regular NBA schedule, I believe he has a lot more time to just practice these dunks. He was talking about jumping over the car. He's like, yeah, I was using my friends' cars, and we were renting out gyms. And I'm like, who has time for this when you're actually playing an 82-game schedule and you're in the rotation?
No, he makes his money at the NBA dunk contest. I think he made $300,000, and it pales in comparison to what he's made as a pro.
Exactly.
It's
and
not
I'm
even
not
close.
hating on him at all. I think what he does is awesome. And I honestly think my hot take
is some damn impressive dunks that he did the other night.
I say bring in all of the pro dunkers of the world who do this stuff around year-round and have them just do a dunk off and do some stuff that we just haven't seen, because you're asking guys to be, awesome professional basketball players, but also professional dunkers in a sense. And there's only so much you can do while you're in the air. But I think that he has a built-in advantage in this particular event because he just has more time to work on these things. I mean, I'm thinking Stephon Castle, for the Spurs. How much time do you think he had to really go all in on his dunk package playing for the Spurs who are trying to get into the playoffs? So I just don't understand the balance there, and that's something that I've just been thinking about a lot. Like, who has time to go get a car and rent out a gym and jump over it and practice how they're going to do it?
I just feel like all those NBA vets, like post All-Star break, they're all like, I'll do it. And then like 72 hours goes by, like, yeah, I'm not doing it.
So John Morant, shout out to Nathaniel Finch for this. He tweeted this out last year.
I don't know. He must have. But, again, I believe he might have been.
Of all the guys that I would label as, like, stars in the NBA, he would be the one that I think would actually do it. Like, I would never believe LeBron, Giannis, insert whoever, whatever, Tatum, Brown. So I guess Brown did it now that I think about it. Didn't he do it last year?
Yeah, it was bad. That's why you don't remember it. It was not good.
At Lucas Oil. Yeah.
But I respect him for doing it. I do think that Ja would do some incredible dunks because he is unbelievable. And you talk about pull, Kevin.
I mean, his in-game dunks are amazing, John Morant.
Yeah, and that's one of the things Anthony Edwards talked about because he's another, like, just next-level dunker. I remember watching him at Target Center a few years ago throw one down and thinking, this guy can fly. But he was saying himself, I'm more of an in-game dunker. Like, I don't have the creativity. I can just put a guy on a poster. I have, me, James, speaking, no ability to do either. But I think Ja will be fun. It's just that what do we want to see them do that we haven't seen already is my question. Because we can't fly yet, I suppose. But, I mean, there's only so much it comes to, like, human advancement. Because you look at some of the dunks that MJ did back in the day, Vince Carter, in the early 2000s. We see some of these guys do these dunks in games now. So, I don't know.
Zach Edey with Jaren Jackson Jr. on top of him. That's what Ja Morant will be doing next year at the dunk contest. I did not watch I was honestly flipping back and forth Saturday night from the dunk contest to another sporting event that I was captivated by. We'll share that on the other side. Again, Bob Kravitz, 9, Bruce Weber, 9:30. Thank you for spending this Tuesday morning with us right here on The Fan. Tuesday morning. Thank you for spending it with us. Do want to give a shout out over the weekend. I don't know. I might be the only one, but golf-wise, I was tuned in. A little Patrick Rogers, local angle here, the Avon product. Was going for his first PGA Tour win, and unfortunately, Maverick McNeely and Ludwig Aberg had the Sunday to remember, both of those guys. But Rogers wins $1.2 million for third place. That doesn't sound too bad, does it, boys? Third place, $1.2 million.
I've never wanted to be the third best at anything in my life.
I'd happily take that bond.
Yeah, 287 career starts for Rogers. He's had a fine PGA Tour career, but and really just in a loaded high school class. Jordan Spieth, Justin Thomas, Xander Schauffele in your high school class. You're probably going to be a bit undershadowed by that once you get to the PGA Tour level. So knocking on the door, though. I know he's had a lot of success at Torrey Pines. That was fun to watch Saturday bleeding into Sunday. Okay, so Saturday night. This, and credit to Brendan King for this. Mark Dykton, I know you probably were locked into it a little bit. James Boyd. Mark, how much were you watching the Nations Cup? And shout out to our boy Sean McDonough on the call.
No, Sean McDonough is great. I actually forgot it started, and then everybody's like, "Are you watching this hockey game?" I was like, "Oh yeah, that's on." And I joined it like fight 2.5. Like as the second fight was breaking out, seconds into the start of the game, I was like, "Okay, we're going here."
That is the best part.
Throwing bows.
James, did it catch your attention at all? Because I was a little bit of a, oh wow, this is blowing up on social media. I need to turn over to this as well.
Yeah, that's kind of my thinking, but I usually try to leave my hockey commentary offline because I know as soon as I tweet anything, they're like, "You don't know what the heck you're talking about," and I don't. But I enjoy the fight. I know that. I know who can get a lick, in and who's winning that part of whatever battle's going on. But I enjoyed it, and I think that's one of the best parts about hockey is, you don't like somebody, you can just drop the gloves. Like as soon as the puck drops, you can drop the gloves and just get it on. And certainly no love lost, especially in a high-stakes thing like this, which is what, contrasts with the NBA is what the NBA is missing. Obviously, a little bit more stakes involved with the Four Nations face-off, but I enjoyed it.
So we're going to play them on Thursday, it looks like, again here.
Rematch.
Am I seeing this
and
correct?
I love rematches.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Now, this
Thursday
is interesting. I'll never forget this. My first ever bachelor party was in Vegas. Nothing says your bachelor party's experiences will only go downhill from here. And I mean, just us in Vegas was the stupidest thing in the world. We took this 8 a.m. flight out on a Friday morning, so you land at like 8 a.m. Vegas time. And, I mean, we all thought we were Usain Bolt sprinting and were humbly hit pretty hard in the face. But I'll never forget landing and going to our hotel and the sports book being in an absolute craze. Again, this is the crack of dawn, just barely past it. This was at the time the semifinal U.S.-Canada Olympics back in Sochi. So this would have been 2014. And then I kind of had forgotten this. The NHL didn't allow their guys to go to the Olympics each of the last 2 cycles. So we haven't gotten this in 2018 or 2022. And so that aspect to it, I think, played into it a little bit more from what you saw the other night. Now, it does sound like NHL players will be sent to the Winter Olympics coming up. I think it's Italy, if I'm not mistaken, next year. And then they've already announced for 2030 as well. But that was awesome. And I don't know if we can get the Kachuk brothers to, tag team against James Johnson, Isaiah Stewart, something here. But that was absolutely electric. And I guess now Thursday night means appointment television for me again.
Yeah, I think so. I think, Jack Eichel, he was saying it's Game 7. And so obviously people here in America know that Game 7 means do or die. And I love that because and again, I love the rematch aspect of it because it's either you get to say, we're top dog for a reason if you're the U.S., and we're just better than you because we beat you twice. Or, if you're in Canada's, position, their line of thinking is probably thinking, all right, you won the one that didn't really matter. Now we got our leg back and you can go home. And so I love that aspect of it and the physicality as well because I definitely think it'll be physical, emotional, and all those things just make, I think, hockey a really interesting sport. I actually went to my first hockey game in Nashville, I want to say last year, and it was a good time. Like, it was – they actually fought. I forget who they were playing, but they fought in like the first 3 seconds of the game. No joke. And I thought it was awesome. I was like, what is going on? All I see is, Dukes up, which was really cool.
Okay,
I'm curious on Thursday, too, because they have this game, but then the NBA returns. I think it's a rare situation where hockey could overshadow the NBA.
Oh, it certainly will. Yeah. I think there's no debate. I think it will. Now, I want to be very clear. Like, hockey is just a different sport. Like, again, I don't act like this is commonplace in hockey, but, like, we have seen, fights happen before. So I know, like, the NBA can't mimic it. But I was thinking a little bit, and I've always been a believer in if Adam Silver called me tomorrow and said, okay, how would you save the All-Star game? I'd say to him, it's probably not going to happen. Let's be clear. But if you want me to give you anything, I would say this. First off, I like the target score. I like the Elam ending aspect to it.
Yes.
I would stick with that, especially in the fourth quarter, obviously. Now, what about NBA versus the world? And could you start to rotate the All-Star game? Hear me out a little bit on this, okay? Again, I don't think it's a great idea, but I think it's decent. If you were able, like, we saw during the Olympics, that was real. And now, look, that was USA versus France on French soil. That obviously speaks for itself, largely to a degree. But could you rotate it we got that Nations Cup game Saturday night in Montreal. What if you said, hey, All-Star game in a 4-year cycle, 2 sites in the United States, 1 year out of the 4-year cycle to be in Canada? I mean, look at how many Canadians are in the All-Star game. And then 1 year it would go over to Europe. And I get that people would bitch and moan about travel and all that. You charter them over there, and you charter them back, and they're all in one big charter together, and you have it, look like the Team USA charter over to the Olympics, and you do that. Could that drum up anything of you got a little bit of a different crowd, different atmosphere? I know it's not country v. country. I get it's not a hockey fight waiting to happen, and those dudes are just different. I mean, I'm looking at this press conference afterwards was it Brady? I think it was, or maybe it was Matthew. I don't know which brother it was, but these dudes just look like they want to fight their breakfast each morning. I'm like, this is awesome. I get that you're not going to get that, but could you get something? So are you agree, disagree, or should I just say accept the All-Star game as it is? USA versus the world, 4-year cycle, 2 sites in the U.S., 1 in Canada, 1 over in London or Paris.
I would entertain it, but I just picture NBA players who almost
tell me if I'm an idiot.
You're not an idiot, but it would never happen. Like, I just think that NBA players in the league itself is so player driven that they would just be like, no. Especially
but aren't they? I mean, but they talk differently about the Olympics. They do. I mean, I can't wait to watch the Netflix documentary this week on it. I mean, Durant's crying. And again, I don't want to act like this would be the Olympics. But if you gave me 1/10 of it, it'd be better than what you're giving me right now.
I know, but I think we're in someone threw this out there on Twitter the other day, and I enjoyed this thought process. We've put so much emphasis on today's current athletes to win championships, and the ability to go back and look at every single play, every single pitfall, and just discredit it. We have, online trolls every day saying that, some of the greatest in the world are just terrible because they messed up their parlay. And I think since we put so much emphasis on that, it's almost like a mark against you if you, like, say you go out there, you have a great All-Star game, right? And you play well, you play hard, whatever, and you're Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, SGA. And the SGA doesn't make it out of the first round of the playoffs. He's going to get crushed for that. It's like, oh, well, you had all the in the All-Star game. So I don't know, man. It's a bit of a catch-22, but I would definitely enjoy to see more competitive basketball. It's just I don't see it's going to happen. But we'll talk more about the All-Star game when it comes to, our GOAT analysis. I have some things to say.
GOAT action coming up. That is James Boyd. I'm Kevin Bowen, Mark Dykton on the 1s and 2s. Bob Kravitz at 9, Bruce Weber at 9:30. Thanks for potentially starting your week with us.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
It's myself, Kevin Bowe, and James Boyd. I'll be coming at you tomorrow as well. I am down in Florida on vacation with my family and my parents. Lovely time down here. Don't want to rub it in any more than that. It's unbelievable how much the waistline has already gained here in the first 48, 72 hours. It's just so pathetic.
Is there like a go-to meal or drink when you get down there for you?
Oh, boy, I'd say anything, but that sounds so desperate. I've had several rum runners.
Okay.
Went to the Ugly Grouper last night with my children and my wife. We had a great time there. Gosh, it's just so nice to see the freaking sun. I mean, it is just you walk off that plane. I mean, like we flew into the Sarasota airport. It's one of those airports where you walk off like outside.
Yeah.
I'm like, God, this is heaven. I'm like, this is awesome, man. This is just absolutely great. So we're having a wonderful time. Brendan King and yourself, Mark Dykton, right? Thursday, Friday? I want to make sure I map out the week correctly.
Yeah,
is that right?
So Brendan coming in just in time for USA Canada, so I'm sure we'll talk about that a bit on Thursday. And, yeah, we're wrapping up the week on Thursday, Friday, Brendan and myself.
It's a crazy thing. Obviously, Monday we'll recap coming up IU Purdue round 2 from Assembly Hall, and then we'll be at the Combine. James Boyd and I will be at the Combine a whole lot here coming up next week. Do we have a date yet for Chris Ballard or Shane Steichen?
We do not. I will be bugging Colts PR. I know if anybody should know the date before it's officially released is Mike Chappell. I just haven't bugged him yet, but Mike is always on top of those things. The Dean, baby.
He is. So I think next Tuesday those start to happen. So we could be having that in a week. So we'll keep you posted on that. When I get to our GOATs from the weekend, one thing I did want to mention, I think this is announced on Friday, but I love to see, because right now, college sports I think are viewed in a pretty negative light by some people out there. But I think what is really important specifically for college basketball and football to continue to maintain is the marquee non-conference moments, preferably on campus. I think those atmospheres are real, they're genuine, they're authentic, and they're great. And I think, in this conference domination and the SEC and the Big Ten seemingly sprinting out in front of everybody, I really worry if we're still going to continue to get that. Purdue announced a home and home with Iowa State coming up each of the next 2 years. And I love this. For those that haven't paid attention, Iowa State's had a really nice run. I know TJ Altenberger is someone that maybe some Indiana fans would like to take a look at. But it's a home and home. I think Mackey and Hilton Arena, where Tyrese Halliburton played, are two very underrated atmospheres when you talk about it from a college basketball standpoint. So I am a fan of this. I know Purdue just had one with Marquette. I know Purdue has the what's it called? The Indy Classic now. They've got Auburn at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, which, again, give me anything non-conference, but a neutral site for that one. This will be on campus. So James Boyd, I like it. Shout out to Purdue. Shout out to Iowa State. Home and home here upcoming each of the next 2 years.
Yeah, this will give me some chance to talk some more trash to Tyrese Halliburton. Because when he first got here, he found out I went to Illinois, and he's like, and I remember asking him, hey, are you going to watch the Big Ten tournament? Because it was here in Indianapolis at the time. And he's like, I'm not watching that trash, boring basketball. He said a bunch of screens. And I was like, well, you didn't go to Iowa because, you couldn't get into Iowa.
What a great comment by him.
Exactly. So that should be fun. And I enjoy that too, Kevin. And I do think that, sometimes people can be a little unrealistic when it comes to college athletics and miss the point. Like, obviously the skill level isn't what it is at the pro level, but you cannot convince me that the atmosphere is better at the pro level, especially when it comes to basketball. No chance.
And you got to separate yourself. And that's how you separate yourself. You've been to many NBA arenas, James, and you've been into a lot of college arenas. It's different. And, yes, the skill level's not going to be the same, and it can be a slog, watching college basketball at times. But the atmospheres is what separates it. And I'll never forget, what that felt like for Notre Dame and Indiana in that playoff game, back a couple months ago. And, again, college basketball, you have that ability in the first couple of months of the year. So I like that from Purdue and Iowa State. All right, Mark Dykton, cue it up. Let's get to our GOATs of the weekend.
Who is the GOAT?
I told you all that I was the greatest of all time.
Jordan, here's Michael at the foul line. A shot on Elo. Good!
That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Or GOAT?
This guy sucks.
Of the week.
All right, so this is our first show after the weekend. We will get to our GOATs right here. James Boyd, we're going to start with our positive GOAT. Mark Dykton, you actually want to kind of lead us in the right direction here? What is your positive GOAT from the weekend?
Both of my GOATs, good and bad, stem from Sunday night viewing. So we'll go there. Sunday night, which is weird because it's usually on Saturday, was the Saturday Night Live 50th anniversary special. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic. The best part of the night was they had a bunch of different sketches, recurring characters and stuff. The Scared Straight sketch with Eddie Murphy, Will Ferrell, Jason Sudeikis, and Kenan Thompson, that was laugh out loud hilarious. I thought that was very cool. It was also just wild to kind of like when they would pan to the audience just to see what celebrities were paired up next to each other. It was like Kevin Costner and Jenna Ortega at one point, and like Lady Gaga and Jack Nicholson. It was very weird, but it was very cool, very enjoyable. Some great music as well, cool montages and all that stuff. We were locked in on the Saturday Night Live 50th anniversary special.
I love it. I love it. James Boyd, you want to follow up with your good GOAT from the weekend?
Yes, my positive GOAT is Michaela Blakes, a freshman from Vanderbilt guard. She scored 55 points in a win over Auburn, her second 50-point game of her freshman season. She scored 30 of her 55 in the final 6 minutes in overtime of the game. And so she's an awesome player, sounds like a great kid. And I've been more and more into college basketball, women's college basketball in particular, because of obviously the Caitlin Clark explosion the last couple of years, and I've kind of just stayed with it. And then you see the other performances, you just think the game is in good hands. And so it is amazing to see the talent around the country and the parity, too, because UConn got blew out. Like, and then when I was in college, like, UConn never lost, it seemed like. So I'm enjoying the women's hoops for sure. And Michaela Blakes, man, 55 in a college game is unheard of.
Can we give a shout-out to my Irish right now? That is 18 in a row for Niele Ivey and the women. Olivia Miles, Hannah Hidalgo, the backcourt that is entertaining as hell. They have not lost in the continental U.S. Their only two losses are in Grand Cayman. So just avoid Grand Cayman. Avoid Georgetown, Grand Cayman here in the tournament, and we'll be good to go. They beat Duke last night. I know a lot of people check that out. My negative GOAT will revolve the alma mater of James Boyd, so I'll stay away from that here. My good GOAT of the weekend, I'm going to Wofford big man. Now, this is Wofford the college, and I hope I'm saying this name right. Kyler Filewich. Boys, he shoots 34% from the foul line. So what has he resorted to? He goes granny style at the foul line. I love it. This dude is 6'9". He's 250. He's from Winnipeg. He rocks the headband. He looks like your exactly stereotype mid-major big man that will get in the tournament and will just get buckets on dudes. He averages 11 and 9, but when you foul him, you get the underneath granny style. There is no better GOAT from the weekend than that. He's a finance major, so I assume Kyler is very intelligent. Clearly, he has struggled to shoot free throws in his life. Go granny style, baby. We need Wofford in the tournament to see Kyler shooting free throws.
I did see this, and he actually banked one in. I was watching some of his quote-unquote highlights, and so it is funny to see a player lean into it and actually see it work, because I believe he's shooting on, like, now, since changing, he's in, like, the 60th percentile when it comes to free throws, and so that's a lot better than, like, 30%. So there you go.
He's gonna hit 50 in a row at some point here.
Don't be afraid to stand out.
Hey, makes or makes, baby. I don't care what it looks like. Mark Dykton, go ahead with your negative GOAT from the weekend.
All right, so Sunday viewing, the good was the 50th anniversary of Saturday Night Live. The lowercase GOAT was whatever the NBA All-Star game has resorted to. James and I were talking in the break. I'm like, I don't know how you fix it right now, but whatever that was on Sunday was terrible. Like, not only did you have Kevin Hart and other guys just ripping the product while it's going on, you had these long lulls in between the games. The games were short. Draymond Green was ripping it, saying you work all hard to get to an All-Star game, then you reach to 40 points, and that's it. Like, it was bad. I kind of think you go maybe U.S. versus the world. I mean, that's my thought at some point, because you kind of look at, like, the international players that have taken over the NBA. I mean, you put a starting five out of Luka, Jokic, Giannis, SGA, Wembanyama against the best U.S. five. I'm tuning into that. I don't know if anybody else is, but I'd be locked into that. I sure as hell would be a lot more locked into it whenever it was on Sunday. It was really bad.
James Boyd, what you got for your negative GOAT of the weekend?
To piggyback off Mark, I'm going to go LeBron James. I thought that
that was terrible.
Yeah, like to come in and you're the 21st, consecutive All-Star, you're the face of the league, and you get asked, hey, an hour before the game, what do you expect to do tonight? And we didn't expect to see much, obviously. And then he says, I'm not playing. I'm like, you could have said this and let somebody else have the opportunity to be an all-star. And the same thing goes for Anthony Edwards. He sat out the games as well. And I'm like, what are you guys doing that I felt like, for LeBron in particular, this was more of an ego-driven type of thing where you just didn't want to do it because you didn't have to, and you're LeBron James. And also, to not even put on the uniform in the photo. I'm like, why would you ruin that picture like that? Like, that bothered me so much. And again, people know online, like, I'm a LeBron James defender in certain aspects, but that to me was wrong, and he deserves to kind of get some heat for that.
James Boyd, your alma mater over the weekend.
I knew you were going there.
First off, I don't want to act like I have rich history for Illinois basketball, but I first had a question when I saw they're inducting Terrence Shannon into their Ring of Honor. I was like, very good player. I mean, I think he was an All-American last year. I don't think he was a first-teamer or anything, but I think he was. Okay, third-team All-American, and they obviously made a nice run in the tournament, so I don't want to ignore that. But they unveiled the Terrence Shannon Jr., what is it, Ring of Honor, jersey retirement, whatever you want to call it, and they've got the damn thing upside down. Well, I mean, what? And I hate ripping them because I'm sure this is some just poor college staffer that doesn't make a ton of money. But I mean, that's got to be the first thing we check, right? We unveil the banner, and I've literally thought I was seeing a scene from The Onion when I saw this thing upside down. I literally have had this fear before when the Colts do their Ring of Honor, and Irsay awkwardly finally says, and look up there, kind of points in the direction. I'm like, wait, where am I looking here? Like, is everything going to be spelled correctly? And when they had that upside down for Terrence Shannon, I was like, you know what? This literally made my day.
Yeah, real quick, one thing I'll say about the Terrence Shannon Jr. thing going in, he probably would have been a first-team All-American if he didn't have the legal issues that now he's been acquitted for and things like that. And so I think the way Illinois explained it was our standard is like if you're a first-team All-American, basically, and he would have been that had he not had the off-court issues that, again, now are behind him. So weird, ceremony and something that they should definitely be ashamed of because it was comedic but also very, very bad for your brand.
All right, on the other side, 9 o'clock hour, will Caitlin Clark be a part of the Indy 500 festivities? We'll share a little update on that. Bob Kravitz going to join us, and Bruce Weber scheduled for 9:30. This is the Fan Morning Show. Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, and Mark Dykton.
Yeah.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, get to Bob Kravitz here in just a second. Scheduled to have Bruce Weber. I know he's on an early morning flight. Hopefully everything safe travels on that front, and he will join us coming up at 9:30. I did want to share this before we get to Bob. Reminder, Kevin Bowen, James Boyd with you here each of the next 2 mornings, along with, of course, Mark Dykton. Mentioned it earlier. Nathan Brown does a great job covering IndyCar for the Star. They'll have their first race coming up at St. Pete a week from Sunday. He had a little Q&A with Doug Bowles, who we had on the show on Friday, was asked about Caitlin Clark, if she would have any, I guess, responsibility. Sounds like she'd be like working very hard, but anything to do with this year's Indy 500. Remember last year the Fever played out in Vegas the night before the 500, obviously difficult. This year they have a home game on Saturday afternoon, a 500 weekend. Bowles' quote is this: "What we've agreed to with the Fever management is that Caitlin's primary job is to play basketball, and we want them to win. And that's the beginning of their season. So the last thing we want to do is put in some sort of invite that's going to cause her or the team to be distracted. I do think you may see her out here at some point in time, perhaps even this May, but my guess is it would be more of a Fever collective about the whole team, with the fact that they're in the middle of their season. Right now, we haven't finalized anything." So, again, Michael Strahan is your pace car driver with the Fox connection on that front. I tend to think a Caitlin Clark involvement of a green flag wouldn't be too distracting, but that's just my 2 cents on the situation.
Yeah, obviously everyone wants to get a piece of Caitlin Clark and to see her do anything because she's that big of a star. But I can understand from her perspective or the Fever perspective that she probably just wants to lock in. And one of the things that, we can't overstate enough is that Caitlin she reminds me of Kobe when it comes to her mentality. So I do think that she is probably like, when it's season, I'm in this mode where I'm trying to kill everything in front of me, and I don't even want to be distracted by anything else possibly from that ultimate goal of trying to win a championship this year, which is, very clearly what the Fever's goal is. So we'll see how it shakes out. I would love to see her out there. I would love to see myself be out there for the first time and see her out there as well. But again, Caitlin Clark has a million things to do on her plate, and maybe this is one where she can make it happen. But if she isn't, no one's going to be too upset with her because she's probably going to give us another very fun season here in May.
All right, let's head to the Payless Liquors hotline right now. You can find his work, bobkravitz.com. He is the legend that is Bob Kravitz. Bob, I am all in on the Nations Cup. I'm all in. Saturday night. I loved it. The genuine fighting. I almost texted you. I was so in on it, and I cannot wait for Thursday.
Thursday night, I would bet that some of the Canadians start some crap right at the beginning of the game. Because they're in the Americans' barn, and I bet you that thing starts off with a bang. Don't be away from your couch in the early minutes, because I think they're going to want to, quote, send a message, and it's going to get ugly fast, and then they're going to play the most beautiful hockey you've ever seen. It's just a shame that because of geopolitical events, the Russians aren't there, because they are fabulous. But this has been great theater. The goaltending hasn't been quite as good as I would have hoped, but boy, it's been tremendous stuff. I've really been thoroughly entertained. Last night's game meant absolutely nothing, and it was played at a really high level. And I don't know if the NBA can take some notes, but they clearly need to do something with their All-Star event.
Now, are our brothers nuts? The Kachuk brothers, Matthew and Brady, are they crazy?
Yes, they're completely crazy. And that's the thing. Like in Canada, and I follow this stuff because I like to follow stuff nobody else cares about. But there's Tom Wilson, who plays for the Washington Capitals, who's a real tough guy and a good goal scorer. And everybody up there is screaming that the Canadian GM didn't add Wilson to the team. The Canadians are really heavy in just pure skill and skating. They don't have that dog, and that's I think they stood up and they went toe to toe with the Kachucks the other day, and there was one other fight. God, 3 fights in 9 seconds. I've never seen that in my life. But I think they could have used Tom Wilson on this roster.
Bob, can you take us back to when you were duking it on the ice? Did you ever have some fights where you were like, yeah, I got one in today? And were there ones where you were like, you know what? I got. This black eye I kind of deserved.
Yeah. Well, I started some fights because I was a goaltender, and I like to use my stick when guys were too close to me. So I was a bit of a disturber in the net. But one time in high school, this is back in the days when you had like bench clearing brawls, and we had a bench clearing brawl, and I went out to center ice and I hooked up with the other goalie, and we're both like, oh, let's just dance for a little while. We're just joking. And I don't know if he lost his edge or what happened, but he started to fall and he elbowed me right in the face, and I went down in a heap. So in my fighting career in ice hockey, anyway, I am a solid 0-1.
Bob Kravitz is with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Again, bobkravitz.com, where you can find his work. Bob, let's shift gears here. Certainly a lot of fighting on message boards right now about the direction for the Indiana University program and where they should go post Mike Woodson. What does Scott Dolson need to find? Who does Scott Dolson need to find?
I'll tell you, the guy that I think would be the best fit and a guy who I know they could get is Chris Beard. I don't know what you guys have been saying on the subject. Maybe you can edify me, but I realize he's got some baggage, but the charges were dropped. I think he's married to that particular woman now, if I'm not mistaken. And I think you've got to show people grace, again, the legal, it went through the legal process and nothing happened. And, it may not make him a really nice guy, but for God's sake, he can coach a basketball team. And I think he'd be good with all the rest of the stuff that comes with being the IU basketball coach, all the media requirements and everything else. Just right now Mike Woodson is basically telling everybody to drop dead by not going on any of these radio shows, which I think is really weak.
Well, I don't want to put words in Jeff Rabjohn's mouth, but Mark, feel free to correct me. We asked Rabby about Chris Beard specifically, Bob, a few weeks, or I guess maybe it would have been last week. Mm-hmm. And he brought up just kind of the off-the-court stuff, and I believe he said something to the effect of, and again, like you said, I believe charges were dropped. There were multiple 911 calls, for whether it was this instance or separate instances, and he made it very clear to us that IU would not entertain that sort of hire. Now, again, when you talk about him as a winner, Bob, I mean, it is there's no debating. I mean, he might be the best winner at multiple programs of any realistic coaching candidate that you would throw on this list right now.
Oh, I agree. I'm kind of bummed. I had not heard Rabby say that, and I trust Rabby because I think he's the best guy on the beat down there. Other than him, I think Mick Cronin is interesting. The guy at Drake, whose name is escaping me now.
Yeah, Ben McCollum.
McCollum. He's got a great reputation. He's got kind of a Signetti. He's a younger guy, but like Signetti, he's been incredibly successful at somewhat lower levels. So that's the guy I would think about. But yeah, I don't have. I do think Greg brought up Buzz Williams. I think Buzz Williams would be a good choice. They're in a pretty good position because there's a lot of guys out there who I think would be very, very good candidates.
So to follow up to that, Bob, when it comes to IU, how much prestige does this job still have, in your opinion? Because sometimes I feel like I'm a little insulated here being in Indiana, where I might not really know from a national perspective or even just a regional perspective. Is that still a great job? Is it still one that people want to have, if that makes sense?
Absolutely. the money is tremendous. You've got a huge NIL. Financially, you're in great shape. To me, it's a sleeping giant. IU is a sleeping giant. They haven't done much of anything in years, although I should mention Crean won the Big Ten twice in 5 years and got fired for his troubles. It's absolutely still one of the most coveted jobs, I believe, in college basketball, for sure.
Again, he's Bob Kravitz, bobkravitz.com, where you can find his work. Bob, I would say before last week, it's certainly a very good season at this point to Matt Painter's bunch, and considering what they lost. And obviously, right now, they're still tracking to be, a 3 seed, and we'll see how the final couple weeks play out. For them to be, let's say, an Elite 8 team, Bob, what needs to happen here down the stretch?
I've been saying this all year. I think they got to get Colvin and Heidi on track somehow, some way. They need to come. One of those two guys needs to come of age. I think for the most part with Purdue, what you see is what you get. Really great backcourt. Kaufman Wren's a terrific player who I did not think had 18 points per game in him. And Painter is obviously just a maestro. I think this is a team that could get beat on the first weekend, not the first game, but first weekend, and I think they could reach the Elite 8. But I think they need to get production from some place where they're not expecting it to really take that next step.
That's a good point you made, Bob. Looking at Purdue, how do you see them perhaps kind of responding to some of the issues they've had recently? And obviously we know the standard there, but what are your thoughts on them, in particular Braden Smith, who we've had a couple conversations about over the last year or so and his growth?
Yeah, look, he's the best. I think he's the best point guard in the Big Ten. I think he's one of the best in the country, if not the best. They've lost 2 in a row. I think this is just a blip. I wouldn't be terribly worried about them. They may not win the Big Ten this year, but to lose Zach Edey and to still be in the top, what are they, 13 now? Is just remarkable. It's just remarkable how this guy year after year is able to, have the kind of mix of players that win you games. And I think IU's new coach, whoever that may be, could learn a lot of lessons from the way Matt Painter recruits.
You know that voice quite well. It's Bob Kravitz. He's with us here. Again, bobkravitz.com, where you can find his work. Bob, last one from me on the Colts front. A week from today, we'll be down at the Combine. We'll have shows for you all next week from there. Need 1 and 2. If I stop there on the list for you, need 1 and 2 for the Colts this offseason is what?
Cornerback and tight end. What do you think? What's your...
In that order?
You guys... I'd say... with Anarumo, from what I've read, the guys in the secondary, especially his safeties, are really key to making his system work. So, I would say, 1, 2. I could kind of go either way, to be honest with you. I think they need secondary help in the worst way, but they haven't had a tight end here since Eric Ebron had his miracle year. So I can kind of go either way. Tyler Warren from Penn State interests me to no end, and I saw James. One of James' 37 mock drafts for the Athletic. And I love when you have to write a story about what the guy who's the mock draft guy at your place.
Dane Brugler is probably like our top mock draft guy. Dane is the man. Dane's
the man, but Dane would pick a guy and then you'd have to write about him. I just thought That was so inside baseball.
Clicks, baby.
Yeah.
Look,
clicks,
man,
baby. It's all about the clicks. So.
We're in the clicks game. So, Bob, obviously always great to have you on. And speaking of clicks, we'll continue to subscribe to your work at bobkravitz.com. So make sure you all check that out. He's an awesome guy, great mentor to me personally. And I'll see you soon, Bob, when things heat back up.
Can't wait, buddy. Good talking to you guys.
Bob Kravitz right there, Payless Liquors hotline. You know, James, on the Warren front, I think I mentioned this to you kind of in the opening hour. We actually played some Dane Brugler audio on the quarterback front a little bit earlier. I think I was always like, damn, Tyler Warren he's so much more than just a tight end. I think you watch him at Penn State and they line him up everywhere. But Dane Brugler had an interesting stat that stood out to me. And, when we've talked Colts and playmakers over recent years, I really feel like the Colts have really lacked guys that take the ball and make a play. Like, you don't have to throw it 30 yards down the field to this guy. No. You get the ball in their hands, and then they create it. They're the self-creator. They're the guy that, whatever, with their speed, their power, their ability to break tackles, et cetera, they make the play post-catch. Tyler Warren last year at Penn State, 56% of his yards after the catch. That is a big number for a tight end. For that not registering to a lot of people, that percentage is a big number, right? Last year, Brock Bowers in the NFL, he was a little right around 50%. George Kittle, for example, a little bit underneath that. So when you get 56% from Tyler Warren, when everyone's game planning against him in the Big Ten, that is a playmaker, ball in his hands. And that, I think, is what is lacking for the Colts, and it's why I said to you in the opening hour, James, I just view it as almost like Warren or bust right around that pick. I don't know if he'll get to 14, so maybe you'll have to maneuver considering the lack of offensive skill. But, boy, he's just got to be so highly coveted when you think about the need on this team.
And one of the other things we talk about his ability to make plays happen, I looked at his stats, and I'm seeing some of the film as well. He had 26 carries for 218 yards and 4 touchdowns. Like, as a runner, he averaged 8.4 yards a carry. And so I'll say
he was
that
in the
to
Wildcat a ton.
That's what I'm saying. And I think that this is one of those scenarios where I don't know if you see him in the Wildcat in the NFL, but you give Shane Steichen that sort of creativity or versatility when it comes to the tight end position. I would expect them to be able to utilize him and maximize his skill set, and especially make, obviously, life easier on Anthony Richardson. I mean, the guy is, 6'6", 255. If you can't hit that big target across the middle of the field, then, I mean, what else do you need to help bring that completion percentage up?
And that's different than Bowers. Bowers was a little bit on the smaller side of a tight end. Obviously, he's a great, great player, but like Warren has that physical stature. It's a little different. And, I remember watching that Orange Bowl against Notre Dame. Whew. James, he's throwing dudes out of the club that, like, those guys for Notre Dame don't get thrown out of the club very often. Like, first off, there's not many clubs in South Bend, certainly ones that you would probably want to go to. But, like, there were times where I saw Notre Dame guys on the ground being like, wait, that's got to be a different jersey number. I'm not seeing that. Like, that guy does not get tossed like he got tossed, and yet, that's the type of presence that Warren has. So hopefully Bruce Weber going to join us coming up in 10 minutes. Thank you to Bob Kravitz for joining us there. Let's hit a morning check down.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by the Barbasol Horizon League Basketball Championships. March starts here at the Corteva Coliseum, March 10th and 11th.
6 teams within 2.5 games of Michigan for first place in the Big Ten. 2 of those teams will meet tonight in East Lansing. Purdue is a 3.5-point underdog. Again, they are trying to avoid their first 3-game losing streak since the 2019-20 season. James, I thought Bob brought up a good point. If you want to, and it might be the only silver lining from Saturday. Obviously, Trey Kaufman-Renn was outstanding, but Miles Colvin hit a trio of threes. He had been in a big slump over the last month. I do think, just to alleviate some of the pressure, I mean, they scored, 84 with Braden Smith having 6 points, 8 points, something like that. So that offensive output was not the issue for Purdue at all, but Colvin hitting a few shots, seeing a few go through the hoop, I think that'll be big for him moving forward.
Absolutely, especially when we talked the other day about how their bench hadn't given them much in the loss at Michigan. And so, you fix one area, fall back in another. That's college basketball. That's sports in general. But that is encouraging because you want those guys to have confidence going into the tournament and feeling like they can contribute at a high level in high level moments, and they'll have another opportunity tonight against Michigan State.
That is 7 o'clock on Peacock. Noah Eagle and Robbie Hummel will have your call there. 8 o'clock on Peacock. I don't like when we do the double Peacocks. I don't, and Mark, you can play the sound for us here. I don't like that. It's hard to kind of juggle between that. I guess you have some staggered times. Butler and Xavier, that is 8 o'clock tonight. They're a 7.5-point underdog. Sean Miller and Thad Matta, of course, plenty of history together here. First meeting between these two teams. Butler has won 3 in a row. And if you look at their schedule, they do have some chances here to continue to try and somewhat salvage this season here in the month of February or whatever. Get some momentum going into Madison Square Garden for the Big East tournament. So Purdue, Michigan State at 7, Butler, Xavier at 8.
Where's that game at again, Kevin? I can't remember. What did you say?
That is a Peacocker.
Okay. Gotcha. I like it. I like the double Peacock only because then you don't have to, try to find it on like YouTube, on one of your other streaming services. You can just stick right there. I don't mind it so much.
If you want to go double screen, you can't really,
That's
right?
That's true, I guess. Well, I don't know. Can't you have multiple users? I don't know. I don't know what Peacock's limits are.
Yeah, I guess you could.
Then you have to have a double TV or something.
Every time you play the Peacock noise, I am just so struck by how beautiful and loud and perfectly pitched that sounds. Of all those animal noises you've played over the years, one more time for the Peacock sound, because we're double dipping it.
Majestic.
I mean, if that doesn't say you're at the San Diego Zoo, what does? That is incredible from Mark Dykton.
You might see a peacock out down in Florida where you're at. You have a couple more rum runners in you.
And you know what? If I've got a couple more rum runners in me, I might bring out the green Speedo.
Oh, boy.
Did you pack that with you? Maddie, I'm sure, is thrilled that made it in the bag.
I need some context for this green Speedo. Is there a backstory here?
James, I don't want to put any more visuals, into your brain here. Bruce Weber again in a bit. What do we got? Pacers, right? They're back to practice 5:15 tonight, so we'll see how much they've ate and drank on their respective vacations as they get back to work. They'll practice today, practice again tomorrow. They've got the Grizzlies coming up Thursday inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. It is 4 straight at home for the Pacers as they restart and get things underway here. I say the second half of the season. It's more like the final third of the season. All right, in about 5, Bruce Weber from Big Ten Network. He had an early flight. Hopefully his travels have allowed for us to chat with him. We'll do that coming up on the other side.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, Mark Dykton here on a Tuesday. I'm down in Florida doing the show remote. Mark, let me know when we get Bruce Weber. I know he just landed in Chicago, at least I believe it is Chicago. And we'll have the Big Ten Network analyst, obviously former Illinois coach, join us here. I thought it was a really cool video. Brought it up earlier in the show, the Tom Izzo. Congratulations from a ton of Big Ten voices, and let's actually begin there with the former Illinois head coach. And again, Big Ten Network, where you see Bruce Weber. Always enjoy our conversations with him. Coach, I thought that was a really cool tribute you all did for Tom Izzo, just a who's who of voices there. And I'm sure you had nights where you probably wanted to cuss him out on the sidelines, but it seemed like some genuine respect from you towards the coach.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. A really good friend of mine, we both started, if you go way back. I started a little before him at Purdue with Coach Katie, and he started with Judd as an assistant at Michigan State. And I think we both had so many stories about our bosses that we got to know each other real well and shared a lot of fun stories. And definitely respect what he's done. It's just amazing. If you're the all-time leading wins coach in the Big Ten, I mean, it's amazing. So, and for me, he is what college basketball is about. He's about the family. He's about the development of players. He cares about the other coaches. He's there to help people. And, I know he helped me many times and just really respect him and appreciate what he's done there. Just a couple little stories, this year after one of the games, he's, doing the handshake line, and he hits a couple of the guys on the butt, two seniors on another team, and says, "Hey, you're not giving enough for that coach." And most coaches wouldn't do that, but he cared enough about that coach and hoping that they would, though he maybe get a little spark in those guys to get playing a little more. So he cares about people and programs and he cares about the game. So I'm happy for him, well deserved, and it's cool to be his friend.
Coach, James Boyd here. I know we haven't had any interactions, but I'm actually an Illinois alum, so I'd like to thank you for 2005. That was fun. Back when I was a kid watching D. Brown go crazy, and you all make that run. But getting back to, Coach Izzo, when it comes to coaching and doing it for a long time, what's the balance you've seen in him, or even just in general, of sort of reinventing or maybe changing what you do but staying true to who you are? Because as we've seen, college basketball has changed throughout the years, but every year Tom Izzo's team is right there in the thick of it.
One of the things Coach Katie taught me many, many years ago, if you want to stay in the business, you got to be flexible and you have to change. But that doesn't mean you have to give in on your beliefs, your values, your demands of the players. I think one of the things when I go talk to teams, when I do clinics and talk to coaching staffs, it's so important. I tell young coaches, you still have to coach them. You can't be everyone's afraid to lose the players. They're going to go into Florida. Well, they're going to leave anyway. You got to coach them. You got to help your players, give them a chance to win, to have success, and you got to coach them. And that's what when I look around the league and around the country, the guys that still coach them and they are holding guys accountable, they're winning. And I think that's really important. And Tom does that. And he is just, when I go up, he's so proud of what he's created there. It's he wants to walk you around and show you his Hall of Fame that he's created for his program, his locker room for the former players, all these things that, he's created a family, he's created a program, but he's done it, with coaching them and holding them accountable. And those guys love it. I saw Coach Katie for 18 years, 19 years, yell at players, cuss them out, do everything. But those guys loved him. And to this day, guys that we had 40-some years ago they still, appreciate him and care about him. And that's to me, that's what coaching is all about.
Always love our convos with Bruce Weber, the former Illinois coach, obviously a longtime Purdue assistant. He's on the Payless Liquors hotline with us here on this Tuesday morning. Coach, I think we maybe had you on the day of an IU-Purdue game last year. I don't think I specifically asked you about this moment, and if I'm remembering correctly, it probably would have been one of your final years as an assistant under Coach Katie, but we will get the rematch in Bloomington coming up on Sunday afternoon, Indiana and Purdue. What do you remember about the Chad Austin shot in certainly one of the more iconic moments of that rivalry?
It was amazing. And, he hit not just one, he hit two different shots, different years. One was really a game winner. The other one was kind of a clincher. And, I was involved in, a lot of those games for, the 18 years. There's special memories. There's special moments. There's very few games like that, going back to our first ones. This is back to Isaiah Thomas and Rosie Barnes and the scuffle with that and just Steve Alford and all the different ones. But, Chad making that shot, just really cool. When you went on the road, and if you went at Indiana, which we didn't do a whole bunch, but when we did, it was a special, happy bus ride home. There's no doubt about it. And Chad knew how to make plays. I'm sure you've seen or maybe you haven't, but on the journey, that was one of the shows or iconic moments. And they had those games where he made those big shots, and obviously the rivalry is a special one.
Again, we'll get it coming up on Sunday, 1:30 here inside of Assembly Hall. Bruce Weber with us, Big Ten Network, where you can find Bruce now. Always enjoy our combos. Let's stick with Bloomington for a second. Obviously, the last two games, ironically enough, you've had coaches in that building that I would say a lot of fans in that building wouldn't mind seeing, in Mick Cronin and Dusty May. What does Indiana need right now in their next head coach?
It's somebody, to me, and I thought when Coach Whitson came, he would bring that pride. To me, that's what it was about, that special pride of being an Indiana coach, of keeping Indiana kids. I really believe he's done it at Purdue. He believes in the Purdue model. He believes in Indiana kids, and it's a special, unique group of players. They just know how to play. You see it in Braden Smith. You see it in Trey Kaufman-Wren and Fletcher Loyer, their loyalty to the school. I think that's so important. And you still got to get guys from other places. There's no doubt. And they have the national name that they can do that. Still think that's really wanting to be there and that special pride. I think that's the big thing for them. Obviously, a huge hire. And it's not that Coach Whitson hasn't done a good, solid job. They've had some pretty good teams, and it's just this year that his group, which he's got some talent, they just haven't found a way to be consistent.
To pivot a little bit away from the IU situation and just look at the Big Ten as a whole, what's the one team that maybe surprised you or has done a little bit better than maybe you expected coming into this season, where you're like, okay, this is a team people might not want to see at this point in the year?
Yeah, there's no doubt that Michigan, what he's done. And again, he's got some pretty good players. You got, Golden was in a Final Four, and Wolf was in the NCAA last year. You got a player from Auburn, in the mix. But, he's developed that group. They play together really well. There's no doubt. I mean, and they're at the top of the league, so that makes it easier. You see, when you win, you usually have done a pretty good job of getting them together. Another guy that Greg Gard is and Tanjay has, been, I mean, it's just crazy how good he is. And you look at his scoring averages in his first 4 years or 5 years of college basketball. Yeah, I mean, he doubled that. So Greg's done a good job with that group. Blackwell, McGee, I think a lot of Wisconsin fans, and I'm from Wisconsin, they started doubting him, but he's done a good job. And then the one that quietly has done it is Ben Johnson. He's at Minnesota. He's probably got the lowest NIL budget. Last spring he called me, and it just, sometimes you mentor guys, you get to know guys. I've been up and talked to his team and talked to him and his staff a couple times over the last few years, and I just felt sorry for him because he had a great group coming back, and he just didn't have the money to keep the guys. But after that Ohio State game where they missed free throws and did everything wrong, he's got these guys playing, and they can compete with everybody.
Coach, we'll end with this, and I know it's been a busy morning, so we can't thank you enough for joining us here. Bruce Weber on the Payless Liquors Hotline. We'll see two of these teams tonight, Purdue and Michigan State. In total right now, you've got 6 teams separated by 2.5 games here. It's a very jumbled top of the Big Ten. If I said you could pick 2 of those 6 to make the deepest runs in March, 2 of the 6, Michigan, Michigan State, Purdue, Wisconsin, Maryland, UCLA, who would be the 2 you'd pick?
And I think you still got to include Illinois. I know they've lost some games, but and you just everyone keeps saying they have the best upside or one of the best upsides in the league. So I think they have a chance too. So if you kept them, but I think I don't know if there's just one of them. Each one has some things that they do really well. I think we have a bunch of Sweet 16 teams. Now to get to that Final Four, the matchups got to be, the right ones. And I've talked about Dusty May and what they've done at Matt Painter's done an unbelievable job. You lose the back-to-back National Player of the Year, and you're still competing for a Big Ten championship the next year. You've done a good job. Tom Izzo, there were a lot of people the last couple of years, he just didn't have – they'd win enough games to get in the NCAA, but they still weren't in contention. And, he's stuck with it. I think that group, they have such versatility, such depth. I've talked to Tom many times that just can you play 10, 11 guys like he's been doing? And he's never done it before. So when you talk about changing and different styles, he's been able to do that, and they keep coming at people. I think that's so important that they have a bunch of guys that can on a given night can make plays. So I think they can make a run. Purdue can make a run. Wisconsin, they have the scoring to make a run. And maybe the one that UCLA was the with Mick going off on those guys about a month or so ago. And no one knew how the players would react, but obviously they've reacted pretty well, and they're really, really competitive. And I think their only loss in this last stretch has been at Illinois, and that was a close game. So I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun watching this last stretch. You got storylines. Who's going to win the league championship? Who's going to sneak in the NCAA in that middle of the pack, and then who's not going to get into big tournaments? So I don't like that all the teams aren't getting in. As a former coach, I think it's really, really hard, but it does make for some exciting basketball down the stretch.
You are next in studio. I know you guys got a triple header coming up tomorrow. When are you next in studio, Coach?
I'm in tonight. We just got one show because the games are on Peacock and Fox FS1, I think, and then tomorrow we got a triple header, so I'm in the studio. So the next 3 weeks in the studio. Then we're coming to Indianapolis. The Big Ten tournament should be a blast. To me, I didn't know that first year I did the tournament how exciting it would be, but it's fun. You got all the fans there, and I always joked all the Indiana fans that threw things at me and yelled at me for all these years, they actually liked me, and they wanted to talk to me and take pictures. And so it was fun.
Well, they're not used to having a long stay in the Big Ten tournament, to be frank with you, Coach, as you know, with that history. Coming up March 10th, that'll be the Big Ten tournament beginning that week here at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Coach, safe travels, and we'll be watching. Thank you as always.
Very good. Good talking to you guys.
That's a great Bruce Weber right there on the Payless Liquors hotline. All right, we'll do it one final time here. Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, Mark Dykton on this Tuesday morning. 93.5, 107.5, The Fan. Well, just announced again, the NFL Combine will be taking place next week inside of Indianapolis, or inside, I should say, the Convention Center, and over at Lucas Oil Stadium as well. But it looks like also the weather's going to improve a little bit here coming up next week, which is nice. Chris Ballard, Shane Steichen will be meeting the media. James Boyd, it's going to be a late Tuesday for us, isn't it?
Yeah, as my guy, the dean, Mike Chappell says, I'm a 12 guy. Noon is always the perfect time for everything when it comes to media. But I'll take it, obviously, and we got to, kind of catch up. It's been a while since we talked to Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen. And on a more serious note, I believe that there are some questions they kind of have to answer. You want to update on Braden Smith, what's going on there? A draft, obviously, things like that. Shane Steichen, what's going on with Anthony Richardson? Maybe talk to him about what his offseason should look like. So a lot of questions to be asked, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, 4:30 for Ballard's first, right? 4:30 for Ballard.
Yes.
5:30 for Shane Steichen. So that'll be next Tuesday. And what we typically do, we haven't confirmed this yet, but typically for the Combine we rotate. Ballard and Steichen within our shows. I want to say Lou Anarumo might be the third one that'll be thrown into the rotation here for our shows coming up Combine week. Last year we had Ballard on, so I assume that we will be on the Steichen front here coming up next week.
Yeah, and I know Kevin's going to grill him. He's going to come in with the hard-hitting questions like, give me your draft board right now today, and don't you dare trade back. Fun fact for those listening, I know everyone's like, don't trade back. I would love if the Colts traded up every single year, because covering the draft and being in that media room, like, I love you, Kevin Bowen, but, man, I see you a lot and everyone else during that time, because we just live there. When they trade back, I feel like the room just collectively groans because it's like, oh, man, we got to figure out who this guy is. But I'm complaining about obviously having a very fun and unique job, but trade up, Chris Ballard, trade up.
I say this to my wife every day when I head in for day 3 of the draft. I'm like, I love my colleagues. I love them. Like, I genuinely enjoy hanging out with you, but I am so sick and tired of all of you by about 3 o'clock on Saturday.
You definitely made me think. Bowen, every time I freaking read or listen to Bowen, it's like a constant freaking barrage of whiteouts.
That's got to be the anniversary coming up soon of that quote.
Yeah, and boy, that was a while. I tend to think that was like 2019 or 2020. Now, last year, Mark, he kind of froze when I threw the Brock Bowers at him. James, last year when we had Ballard on live, we had him on live, and it was like the same time that Bowers would have been meeting with the media on the other side of the curtain. And for those that have been in the convention center, I think they can kind of picture these ballrooms. Obviously, they are massive ballrooms, and they pretty much put up a huge curtain in between radio row. They used to do the weightlifting in there. Do they still do that, or is that in a different location? I'm trying to think. It used to be the weightlifting in that same room.
I believe it's in a different location.
Yeah, I think they moved it.
Okay. And then the far curtain, is where players are talking to the media. And so Bowers was talking the same time Ballard did, and I said, hey, you got a pretty good pass catcher, and then he shot back at me like, wait, I thought you were the wideout guy, and I go, what? I'm just the pass catcher guy. And
you don't.
If you want to believe the rumors, not at all. And if you want to believe the rumors, then maybe they would have had a little interest there. I am curious. I don't know if this year we have it. Maybe it's Travis Hunter and what position he'll play, but like. James, I'm used to, and this will be Combine number what for you? 3 or 4, 5 or 6?
3, I believe. Yeah, number 3.
Okay. We have had like the Kyler Murray presser of the baseball rumors. We've had the Jameis Winston presser. We've had the Manti Te'o girlfriend presser. Like we usually get the one big press conference, just the throng of people. I guess it would be Travis Hunter and like what position he wants to play, but I don't know. Nothing really maybe jumps out at me for this year unless I'm totally forgetting one.
I think Shadur Sanders will draw a huge crowd because he's Deion's son. He could be the number 1 pick. He is a really good college player. And so I think the personality, the name, the position, the need, all of those things will generate some buzz for him. And I just hope that we don't have anyone yelling, "Are you afraid to compete?" at him like they did last year with Caleb Williams. That was probably one of the funniest moments I've had at the Combine. Is Caleb Williams, for those who don't know, he gets up to the podium last year, and before he could even like set his water down, some guy shouts from the crowd like, "Why aren't you throwing? Like, are you afraid to compete against your peers?" And all of us just like look at him like, "Are you serious?" Like, no one ever throws at these things when they're like a consensus top 5 pick, which is probably what Shedeur Sanders is. So that was funny. So I want to see who yells the most ridiculous thing at Shedeur Sanders.
Well, the only other thing I remember being crazy was the 2023 one when Jalen Carter was supposed to speak, and then word got out that he'd left the combine to head back because of that incident.
Yep.
And there was like mass chaos. Somebody's going berserk.
Good call. Yeah.
Yeah, that was awkward. Okay. I was there.
Yeah.
I was actually waiting for that to happen. And honestly, for his sake, it's probably better that it happened before he was up there on the podium, because having to answer for why you have a warrant out for your arrest is pretty, crazy.
So, again, Chris Bauer next week, 4:30, next Tuesday, Shane Steichen, 5:30, and then hopefully we'll have them on our shows at some point next week. I believe it's here, 37-38 straight for the combine here in Indy. 11 collegiate prospects from colleges here, 8 from Notre Dame. Indiana's got 2, Curtis Rourke and C.J. West, the defensive tackle. Purdue's got Marcus Bowe, and there are some people that think, and I know, James, I want to get to your 10-step plan tomorrow on the show, because you have one of the Notre Dame guys slotted to the Colts. They've got 8 prospects here. So basically how the schedule will look next week, again, you'll get a lot of these GM head coaches talking on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. Interviews for players will play out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Workouts begin Thursday. I think I'll be out. I'm out Thursday, Friday this week. I think you guys are going to have Claire Clark on from Visit Indy, who does some great work. Get you a little bit more info on the combine, because again, it's continued to open up more and more to fans. They've continued to let more and more fans watch it, so she'll explain a little bit more on that. I thought her notes said economic impact right around $10 million, $9 to $10 million for the city of Indianapolis here upcoming. So combine week on the horizon.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. Get to see all of my friends from around the league, but also put faces and voices and names to all of the people that I look up this time of year and watch tape on, and using my mock drafts, which all of you always love, because for me, I'm batting 1,000 in these mock drafts. I don't know about you, Kevin, mm-hmm. But I have never missed a pick, and if I have, I was hacked. So that's my excuse.
Hey, that is an understatement. Now you almost resorted to one of the more desperate attempts I've ever seen on Twitter last night, and I'm curious what you would have done had you have gotten there, because power going out is never a good thing. Power going out in single-digit weather is horrific. You said you were at minute 9 last night before you were going to take it to Twitter and ask for a spare bedroom. Had you thought, like, what? I mean, not to get too personal, but are we blanketed up in there? Like, what would have happened had this, gone a little bit longer for you?
I certainly wasn't going to stay in the apartment that night. Like, it ain't that serious. Like I said, I have renter's insurance, and, God be with you. But I would have definitely just called one of my friends and spent the night. I have some really good friends here in Indy. They wouldn't have minded if I crashed on the couch or used their spare room. But yeah, I just want to see if Twitter would volunteer a room. I didn't see too many. I didn't see a response. I saw a few likes, and things like that. But we'll see if we get to that point anytime during the winter. So for those listening who follow me on Twitter, let your boy, just use the couch one night. All I need is just one night.
Man, honestly, it could be a good ploy if you're trying to look at it from a different spot to find some love on Twitter. That would have been the ultimate post-Valentine's Day effort there.
I would actually
write up on an article, sleeping bag confessions.
I was about to say, I'd run from any woman that would offer me her couch through Twitter. Like, that is a little scary.
Who needs Tinder love when you got Twitter love? And that's what James Boyd was trying to attempt potentially last night. Thank you to Bob Kravitz. Thank you to Bruce Weber. Always enjoy the conversations with the former Illinois coach. Again, getting you set for tonight, tip time-wise. It's Peacock for both Purdue and Butler. Purdue at Michigan State, 3.5-point underdog, trying to avoid their first 3-game losing streak since 2019-2020. Butler trying to stretch their win streak to 4. That is 8 o'clock tonight on Peacock. They are at Xavier. They are a 7.5-point underdog. Mark Dykton, I love the Peacock noise. Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, Mark Dykton signing off. Everybody have a great Tuesday.